Want to see if I can get these on. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we are ready to roll then.
You're live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the meeting of the Joint Committee on Cyber, IT, and Biotech. I hope everyone has had a great fall. I just wanted to start by introducing myself. I'm Senator Katie Frey-Hester, and I co-chair this committee with Delegate Chair Kaiser. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you. Delegate Kaiser, I'm delighted to chair this committee with Senator Hester. And I did want to introduce the delegates as they're coming on, and also thanking everyone for joining us this morning for what might be a long day with people in and out of the meeting. I believe that delegates Bartlett, Feldmark, and Kipke will be joining us later. Delegate Ken Kerr from the committee has joined us. And we're also delighted, given that little more than half of our meeting is about education, that we have the chair of the Education Subcommittee, Delegate Eric Ebersole, waving to us right now. So thank you, Senator, and I'll pass it back to you.
Great. Hold on one second. I'm just having a technical issue. I got the right agenda up. Now I do. Fabulous. Okay, so we have an exciting day today. We're going to focus on the role of artificial intelligence in K through 12 education. And before we got started, I just wanted to say that, I really see this as a potential game changer in education. It promises to revolutionize teaching methods, personalize learning, and expand educational access. However, alongside these opportunities are also risks that we have to carefully balance, such as how do we safeguard student data? How do we empower educators with the tools they need to navigate this rapidly evolving landscape? And how do we make sure that AI is implemented thoughtfully? And this committee really is positioned uniquely to help shape Maryland's approach. So we have three sections today. We have the first hour is going to focus on best practices of AI use in K through 12 education with a perspective really from the state level. And I'm delighted that we have a panel of three folks from three great institutions, the Southern Regional Education Board, the West Virginia Department of Education, and the Colorado Department of Education, who are all here to share their insights with us. We've asked each panelist to provide short kind of remarks, like 15 minutes, and we'll hear from all three, and then we'll move into question and answers from the committee. So I just want to do brief introductions before we start. From the Southern Regional Education Board, we have Dr. Stephen Pruitt, currently the president of the Southern Regional Education Board, and Dr. Jeff, I hope I'm going to say this right, Jeff Gagne, who is the Director of Policy Analysis for the Southern Region Education Board. From West Virginia, we have Dr. Jonathan Rollins, currently a coordinator of the Office of Data Analysis and Research for the West Virginia Department of Education. And then from Colorado, we have Dr. Joanna Bruno, currently the Chief Academic Officer at the Colorado Department of Education, and Karen Quanbeck from the Colorado Education Initiative. So with just great lineup there, let's turn it over to the Southern Regional Education Board to start. And I don't know who is going first.
That'd be me.
And before you do start, and I apologize for that interruption, just want to make sure, as Senator Hester was saying, in the three parts, and that we'll hear from our own Department of Information Technology at the end, and some Maryland people about education. Just in terms of the housekeeping, each presentation is supposed to be about 15 minutes with question and answer for about 15. The overall schedule is 3 hours. And if we're all on our best behavior, maybe it can be a little shorter than 3 hours. So anyway, again, thank you so much. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairs. We appreciate that. Again, Stephen Pruitt, President of the Southern Regional Education Board. We are an interstate compact of which Maryland is a proud member. At least we try to make you proud each time. Our role is for 76 years, we've been supporting our 16 states in developing education policies and practices that further your economy. Happy to be here with you, all of you today, and appreciate this opportunity. Jonathan, I'm sorry I didn't actually speak to you earlier, but good to see you on as well. So our role today is to really talk very quickly about, we started our first AI and Education Commission. We've been going since last May. We are very happy that Senator Hester and Delegate Ebersol are both on that commission with us. Just so you have a little bit of a picture, when we have a commission, there are members from all 16 of our states. And in this case, it's a pretty large commission because we have a lot of different aspects that we have to view. So I'm going to quickly share my screen so that you can see a little bit about who we are or where this is going. So we have 5 committees, and really we've combined the K-12 and post-secondary policy committee so that we could look at the different aspects of AI and how it's going to impact instruction and how it's going to impact K-12 and post-secondary. So we have one group that's really focused on K-12 and post-secondary policy, one that's focused on K-12 instruction, one on post-secondary instruction, and one on AI skill development. Just again, to let you know, what's unique about our commission is this is probably the only place you will actually see people from 16 states with everything from sitting legislators to classroom teachers to business and industry. We are happy that we have UPS, we have Humana, we have Amazon as examples of industry that are actually working with us to help develop this project. So we as we go, we're seeing this as probably a 2-year project, but we are happy to say that we are about to release our first set of policy recommendations. Part of our role is never to tell you what to do, but we do recommend based on research and based on the practice that we've observed as what we see as either best or promising practice. So Jeff, I'll turn it over to you and let you talk about our first 6 policy recommendations.
Okay, good morning. Last month, the full AI Commission adopted 6 initial recommendations. I say initial because we didn't want to wait till the end of the commission cycle, which is a full 2 years, to offer our recommendations. We wanted to get out recs as quick as possible. So over the last 6 months, we developed 6 recs that we thought were things states needed to move on that could be done now without legislative action before session started. So these first 6 are kind of pieces in a foundational puzzle. So let me walk you through really quick, and we can talk more later if needed. The first is to establish statewide AI collaboratives. And the only existing example of that right now is Mississippi's AI network called Maine. And it is an ad hoc group of people from across the state. It involves everyone from the military on down to classroom teachers, district folks, agency staff, governor's office, but they meet monthly, and there are 200 or 300 people involved in that group. And the point of meeting monthly is to communicate, to connect, to make sure that what they're all doing is they're being transparent. They're making sure that they're all kind of going in the same direction and are connecting all the dots they need to connect. And I went and spoke to that group and was really impressed with the effort. And they managed to pull that off the first year and trained over like 3,000 teachers now for free with $1 million grant and a community college collaborative. And now they have, I think they're in the neighborhood of 40 or 50 private business industry partners from Intel on down. And all the state agencies, and the governor just gave them $7 million to continue their work this next year. So we see no reason that other states shouldn't try to do the same thing with the idea in mind to meet, to talk, to make sure that we're all, connecting things, because this is moving quick, and a lot of state agencies, the state players, are moving without really having direct communication with each other. And then down the road at the end of the commission's life cycle, the idea would be that those collaboratives then could form a 16-state regional collaborative that could meet quarterly or whatever is needed to talk, share, and make decisions together as a group about what works, what doesn't, and what they need to do going forward. The second one is about guidance, and we had started originally with this rec being focused on just general guidance for K-12 and post-secondary. And what we realized a month or two ago was that actually states need to go back and rethink that. Having general guidance is a good first effort, but what we really need to see is targeted guidance. And what do I mean by that? Guidance for specific groups of folks. Post-secondary students need different guidance than K-12 kids. And elementary and high school kids need different sets of guidance because they're going to be using AI differently. So we think targeted guidance is the way to move in the future. The third is about integrating the AI knowledge and skills kids will need, and those will be different by grade, by subject. And we have a skills group that's working on a document right now that's almost final. And the commission gave really good feedback on last month. But if we don't integrate those knowledge and skills, kids will not come out of high school ready for those kinds of careers in post-secondary down the road. 4 is provide professional development for educators. And we mean teachers, instructors, faculty members, principals, everybody, because we're asking them to do something new with a really advanced tool. And as most teachers will aptly say, my students know more than I do because they don't have any training to use AI or integrate it into their daily practice. The 5th and the 6th go together. One is we have districts across our states that have varying levels of local capacity. That is the ability to do things, especially new things that they haven't done before. States need to determine what districts can do and what they can't do and what they're going to need in help, technical assistance, resources, etc. And 6 is developing the cost, the models, the idea of what is the state going to need to provide to help districts do this equitably, to do this well, to train teachers, to make sure they've got the resources they need. And those two go together. One will depend on the other. You can't develop the cost piece without knowing the capacity piece. In the next 3 or 4 months, we'll drop the second set of recs. Those are all going to be focused, and I think there are 7 or 8 of them right now. They'll be focused on risk management and mitigation. And I'll stop there. Stephen.
Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
One of our committees, which is not quite ready for prime time yet, but Senator Hester wanted to make sure that I did talk about this just a little bit, are some conversations specifically about how do we need to approach AI instruction. As AI was really, or as our committee really started focusing on this, they looked at how it's changing both the educational and workforce landscape, the role of AI in student engagement, and the need for clear guidelines. So one of the things that you will see with our committees is there is this work where they work separately, but there's this gradual convergence to make sure that everything is in proper alignment. I was real proud of this group. They actually not only utilized the expertise on the committee, but they conducted their own surveys. They talked to the schools that they work with and created 4 pillars of what to do when considering these kinds of issues. So enhancing cognitive demand with AI, creating engaging high-level tasks. This is actually something that I wish more teachers were actually more proficient in, but this actually is a way to help them do that. It's also pretty great in that thinking how it's changing instruction so that people are just worried about AI being a cheating mechanism. And what we are seeing is there's also this great opportunity to leverage AI to actually help people think more. Delegate Ebersol told a great story, for instance, about his, I can't remember if it was your niece or granddaughter or somebody that got asked to write a letter, have the AI write a letter as if they were Abraham Lincoln. And then it put the student in the role of the teacher, having to evaluate, is this historically accurate? Is the syntax the same? It really puts them into a different place. The second pillar is about streamlining teacher administrative burden. This is also obviously an area, especially with dealing with the teacher shortages that we have. They also are looking very closely at how AI can enhance personalized learning to meet individual needs. Again, allowing for or recognizing you can't take the human out of the loop. You can't replace a human teacher, but at the same time, you can also enhance those personal learning opportunities. And of course, Pillar 4, which undergirds really everything in all the committees, are developing ethical and proficient AI users, because obviously we can't just go blindly into the use of AI. We've got to recognize that we've got to be able to protect our students, but also that they learn how to use AI in an ethical and proficient way. Sorry, for some reason my mouse quit working. Okay. The last component I was going to share with you very briefly is we have a group, and this is where our industry partners are most focused. And what would it mean to develop skill in AI, both if you're going to be AI literate, which is a word that I'm not completely comfortable using at this point, but where you can have some proficiencies in AI, but also how do you prepare a future workforce that would utilize AI as a tool? So this is kind of the learning progression idea that we're thinking, where elementary school is to know and understand AI, middle school is to use and apply AI, and in high school and beyond, how would you use AI to actually evaluate and create? Undergirded all of that, again, with AI ethics. So the group actually developed 3 learning progressions. First is our success skills. This is based on some studies that we've done of what employers are looking for when they hire. So these are things like self-motivation, time management. In other words, being able to show up to work on time and complete jobs on time. So these success skills aren't a separate set of skills that we kind of just came up with, but these are what we saw when we evaluated roughly 1,500 job announcements in various fields. So the idea of critical thinking, communication, leadership, and so we will be releasing those in January along with the recs, and that actually shows you a learning progression from elementary school forward. We also have industry baseline skills. This is really foundational knowledge. So what do you need to be able to know to further be able to do? This idea that you won't have to know anything is not really where anybody needs to go, whether you're talking about AI or not. There's still domain specific expertise. As a trained chemist, I can tell you that there's no way that I could have learned chemistry purely by AI, but there are chemistry principles I definitely need to know. But maybe I don't need to know that manganese has an atomic mass of 55. I could find that a different way. And then technical skills, these are things that are specific to various industries. And so the learning progression here is really about how to think about the core competencies around data literacy, programming, and AI technologies themselves. Happy to share those. Like I said, they're going to be published on the web in January if this committee is interested. I'm sure that Senator Hester will probably share them, but if you would like, we would be happy to send those directly. What you should know is that, as Jeff said, we are going to be releasing additional policy recommendations. We are going to be releasing course and pathway recommendations that will be aligned to those learning progressions I mentioned earlier. And we'll have a checklist for AI resource selection. One of the things that we're starting to find, unfortunately, is vendors are starting to dominate this space, and they're saying, no, really, we promise what we're doing will tell you everything you ever need to know. We know that we can't necessarily blindly trust that. So the AI, the K-12 classroom group is actually going to develop a checklist so or so a district could have that guidance to say, here's the way I would select resources. And then finally, our post-secondary group will be releasing a landscape of what's going on out there in the world around AI and post-secondary. But in particular, we're meeting with the accreditors. We have 3 accreditors throughout our region, and we're going to be meeting with them to establish guidelines on how to address accreditation across the board. And with that, this is our contact information. We are happy to take any questions that you may have. And again, we just really thank you for the opportunity to serve Maryland. Sorry I couldn't be there. There's nothing I love more than a good trip to Annapolis. But as it turned out, I'm actually in Las Vegas. I'm not having fun, I can assure you. But the National Governors Association is here, and they asked me to come and talk a little bit about this stuff. So, yeah, it's a little early here too. But thank you for allowing us to be here.
Thank you so much, Stephen and Jeff. Really appreciate both of you. I think what we're going to do is if people have a question right now for the Southern Region Education Board, maybe we could put it in the chat and you guys could think about it. And we'll circle back and answer all the questions after all three of our presentations have gone ahead. Is there actually a chat here or is there no chat?
I was actually going to ask that because I don't have that.
Okay, so everybody think about your questions, write them down, don't forget them. And with that, we're going to move on. But definitely, I have one at least for you guys when we come back. So next up, we have Dr. Rollins from the West Virginia Office of Data Analysis and Research. And I think, as was mentioned, this office, along with the rest of West Virginia, was one of the first states on the scene for creating AI guidance in 2024 and continues to have a leadership role on possible solutions towards successful integration. And so with that, I will turn it over to you, Dr. Rollins.
Good morning. I want to thank the co-chairs, Senator Hester and Delegate Kaiser, esteemed members of the Joint Committee. Thank you so much for having me here this morning to speak with you and be a thought partner in this work, and I'm happy to be of service. So today I want to be able to talk a little more generally about what West Virginia has done in this AI space so far, and then to be able to address specific questions that your committee has. So the first place I want to start is just to talk a little bit about some commonalities and distinctions, just because I think when we think about moving plans up to scale, I think there's some additional considerations that you may want to have in consideration in the state of Maryland. So in West Virginia, we have 63 public school districts, 55 of which are counties. So we have more than twice the volume of districts. However, when we kind of look at just some other core metrics, for example, notice that Maryland has more than 3.5 times number of public school students, twice the number of schools, and 5 times more professional staff. So I think when we're talking about professional learning and implementation plans rolling out in the classrooms and training for educators and leaders, there's certain things with that economy of scale that would need to be considered. So in West Virginia, one thing that we did, as Senator Hester had mentioned, we had released guidance right at the end of December last year. So we're nearing up on a year, and we have version 1.1 that we had recently updated back in the month of May to add a few more descriptors, and we're looking towards making an additional update here in the near future to kind of touch on some more emerging topics. So we see our guidance as a living document and try to make sure we're hitting all the new developments as they come along. But first and foremost, we want to keep at the forefront of our minds that really when we talk about AI, that it's person-centered, because any considerations of AI is about people, not actually about AI itself. So we're not, talking about policies around AI for the sake of AI. It's always done to help support people and protect people. And here in West Virginia, we look at it as our mission to do what's best for students and to help support those that work with them every day. So in our guidance, we try to provide descriptive information that's applicable to a general audience. We also dive into guidance that's specific to educators and also try to support work that's happening at the district level. We also, during the early spring of 24, we had a public stakeholder survey that we had over 1,000 stakeholders that represented school and district staff. We had family members, community members who who all participated in this survey, and we have that report posted publicly on our website. And we were able to really dive into that. And I'll kind of touch on some of those results that we found all throughout. But unsurprisingly, people want to see a lot of transparency when it comes to AI. I think here in West Virginia, we found that there was a little bit of unease with it. I think people are still wanting to be very cautious with it. There's a lot of new things that they haven't fully wrapped their heads around. So, I think it's important to have that data and that information up front as we're planning so that we know how to best support everyone. So we also try to make sure we establish a little bit of common ground when we talk about what AI in education looks like. Because, the AI provides the innovation, it's doing something new, but there's also the classroom element and those who are using the AI that are doing innovation with AI and bringing new ideas and thoughts as they use these emerging technologies. But AI in education, so it can really help with personalized learning. It can, prompt more practice problems for students who are struggling, or it can help with differentiation and provide more advanced concepts to students that are working ahead with material. It can really help with kind of rote tasks that could be more laborious otherwise. It can, do digital conversion of handwriting. It can help with speech and language capabilities, language translation. So there's a lot of things that AI already has been used for in education, whether it looks very similar to some of these newest applications of AI that are a little more newsworthy. AI has been around for many, many decades. But what AI in education is not, it's impossible to replace classroom teachers with artificial intelligence, period. You have to have equipped and capable, caring educators that are going to touch the hearts and minds of kids and build their future. AI is also not going to solve every problem. It may be very promising. It may help us make a lot of progress, but it's not going to be the panacea. We also don't want AI to be one more thing that educators have to take on their plate. If anything, it should streamline tasks as they're preparing for instruction and even help administrators streamline some of their tasks. And we also don't want learning AI to be something that's separate than the way we conceptualize computer science, for example, and the way that's worked into the content standards and instruction already. So in our guidance, we had a plan of action. We did it as an if-then postulation just to try and say, if we do these things, then we'll see these outcomes. So if we reinforce that people are in control, we help people become more comfortable with AI, clarify what's ethical use of it, align it with what they already know, encourage an appropriate use of AI, help uphold academic integrity along the way, make sure students are safe and protected, equip our educators to be knowledgeable and skilled in these areas, and help facilitate that dialogue, then that responsible application of AI, we should see individualized learning experiences become improved. There should be improved accessibility for students with diverse learning needs and exceptionalities. We'll see streamlined administrative tasks, instantaneous feedback on certain types of tasks, and preparing students for a future where these emerging technologies are going to be incredibly prevalent. So there's the 5 questions that I had received that was going to be kind of a central part of the discussion. I wanted to just answer the questions very directly, just so that you are equipped with the information that you would like to know. So the first question asking about what's the biggest opportunities and risks for using AI in the classroom. So what I've done here is I've kind of conceptualized this in a 2x2 matrix where the first row is dealing with opportunities and risks in the present, as well as opportunities and risks in the future. So the first row that has those opportunities and risks, those are things that we've talked about in our guidance, that those opportunities kind of flow from that if-then statement I was talking about a minute ago. But we also have to be very aware of risk management strategies and have a plan in place. We don't want students or even educators to become over-reliant on AI technologies. We don't want independent creative thinking to go to the wayside or reduce social interactions. We don't want privacy and safety issues to crop up and create further digital divides and have students who are becoming accustomed to plagiarizing and cheating using these technologies. Those are the things that we have to be able to avoid in the present and moving forward. But in the future, there's some good opportunities that I think could arise that as more and more states start to have increased governance and regulation and policies around AI, I think it will reduce a bit of uncertainty about it. And I think people will feel safer to be able to use it and to be able to move forward with responsible application and use. I think there's also a promise for increasingly realistic immersive learning experiences that students will be able to learn very directly about trades in ways that they otherwise wouldn't be able to do, that would completely redefine that task for them. Hopefully this could also help improve work-life balance for staff at work with students. However, there's some risk in the future that we also want to safeguard against, is that we want to make sure that AI is not used in such a way that it's overused to counteract financial or personnel losses, just because in that sense, AI won't be the panacea. It won't replace people. I think there's also the possibility that there could be an increasing social divide just in terms of how people think about AI, in terms of how to manage it. And I think that while there's different kind of philosophical camps currently that maybe in more academic circles, I think that will start to become more and more commonplace all throughout society as people kind of start to take stronger views on it. And then also, we have to consider the increased autonomy or agency of AI tools that, if we start handing over any bit of our agency, decision making, or anything like that to these tools, that poses substantial risk that we just need to be equipped for. Your second question about types of guidelines and policies that we have or recommend. So the guidance I mentioned divides into three major sections. We have the overall description for everyone, information for educators, and then for schools and districts. Additionally, what we're doing is we're working on a process manual to be able to help our districts pre-procurement as they review potential AI tools. I was very encouraged to hear about the work that SREB is doing on that front as well, in terms of helping to be able to provide support to states in that capacity. So that's going to be great. It will help districts as we move this work forward, and when they're considering widespread AI adoption, that it could help them consider use cases that are specific to administration or instructional material design or real-time AI interactions. Now, we also, in our guidance, we do have a checklist for educators in Appendix 3 near the end of it. So we wanted to put this out on the forefront to be able to outline some specific considerations for not only for responsible use, but for what may a teacher consider as they're planning, delivering, and evaluating their instruction after the fact. We also have a resource site in our professional learning platform that's across our state that all the educators are able to sign into to access more than 50 resources, guides, and toolkits. In terms of how we're implementing AI policy use in West Virginia, we recognize that we have existing policies that certainly need to be considered as people in schools and districts are using AI. We recognize that any guidance we put out doesn't supersede any of those considerations, and some of these policies relate to acceptable use and considerations just for behavior and our content standards, things like that.
Dr. Rollins, can you go through these last couple little hit the highlights so we keep on time?
Of course, thank you. So in terms of successes and challenges, we do have districts that are beginning to implement pilot efforts, and we also have teachers that are self-reporting various uses of it that help their instruction. In terms of challenges, we collected information from that public stakeholder survey and found that nearly 4 in 5 of our respondents expressed some degree of concern or worry. When we compared that to other reports and information, we find that there's some degree of evidence that number seems a little higher in West Virginia than what we're seeing in other geographic areas of the country. terms of policy considerations, we wish we would have had ahead of time prior to implementing guidance. We did try to have a plan of action up front. We made sure we were person-centered and tried to identify our use cases. I think, though, if we could have had a do-over on a couple things, we probably would have convened our AI Technical Advisory Committee more frequently and been able to have more of those structured conversations on in-depth issues. We probably would have spent a little more time studying more deeply some of the AI ethics literature up front, and we probably would have expanded our initial focus so that it wasn't overemphasizing large language models as we were looking at generative AI. So I also wanted to provide a couple of resources. I think the information that SREB is putting out is great. There's other organizations you can check out, and appreciate everybody's time this morning. Thank you.
Dr. Rollins, thank you so much. If you can send along any additional resources to committee staff, then it will be entered into the public record for this meeting and always archived. They'll be famous on the Maryland website. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Once again, committee members, please note any questions you have, and we will come back at the end of our next speaker. Let's go on to the Colorado Department of Education. And here we have Dr. Joanna Bruno and Karen Quackenbeck. And I'm not sure who's going first, but I will turn it over to one of you.
Thank you very much. My name is Joanna Bruno, and I am the Chief Academic Officer here at the Department of Education. And with me today is, I'm trying to get this to display. I'm sorry about this.
No, take your time.
Not coming up.
Joanna, while you're getting it to display, oh, there you go. I'm Karen Quambeck. I am VP of Statewide Partnerships with the Colorado Education Initiative.
So I asked Karen to join me today because we've done a lot of work together in partnership, which we feel is one of the important components of this work across the state. And like West Virginia, I just wanted to give a quick demonstration of what Colorado looks like compared to Maryland. So you'll notice that Maryland has much smaller number of schools and districts, rather 24 districts, where Colorado has over 178 districts. The number of students, though, is very similar to Maryland, as well as the number of schools. Colorado has 500 more schools than Maryland, but the number of students that we are impacting is very, very similar. And I share this only because when we think about policy and buy-in at the district level versus teacher level versus school level, it's a little different when you're rolling big initiatives out. So that could be something for you to consider. I also wanted to just put out our theory of change. Colorado is going through a new strategic plan. And so this was our theory of change. And I just want to draw your attention to our role. We see our role as to serve, guide, and elevate, as well as our priorities around increasing engagement, accelerating outcomes, strengthening workforce, and providing operational excellence. And we see that AI has a role to play in all of those, as well as our role as a state agency. And because Colorado has been long recognized as a beacon for innovation, not only in technology, but also in education. Our state has never shied away from a chance to pilot new models in education. As we tracked the record for, we have a track record for stepping up for improved ways to equip students with skills they will need for a complex future. And our opportunity to meet the moment is now with artificial intelligence. Colorado's focus on the future has led to receiving investments around economic development, as we've been designated a tech hub with the focus on quantum technology. So it's our opportunity to meet the moment. One thing I wanted to point out before I turn it over to my partner is that Colorado recently added artificial intelligence into our academic standards this last year. So that was something I know was a recommendation from West Virginia. We did add those in as well as deepen the information around cybersecurity into our computer science standards as a way to elevate that. In addition, we pushed it down all the way through K-12. So instead of it just being high school standards, it's around K-12 standards, because we see the need for the use of artificial intelligence, but kids also have to be able to understand the technology and data of building artificial intelligence. So we want our kids creating it and using it. And so how do we build those skills in early? And that is through our academic standards. In addition, our state board vice chair, who couldn't be here today because we're in a state board meeting currently, and I were part of the Colorado Education Initiative Steering Committee for creating the Colorado Roadmap for AI. So with that, I'll turn it over to my partner, Karen Quanbeck, to talk more about that roadmap.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you. And I want to extend a huge thank you to everyone who is on the call today, and thank you for inviting us. I am struck by the fact that we as the adults are doing really complex, challenging work for the future of our kids. And we've said for so many years that the future is unpredictable, and we're designing for a future that we can't really know what it will look like, and it is never more true than right now with AI. So thank you for being here today, and thank you for inviting us. Just a quick grounding again in Colorado, you heard a little bit already. The majority of our school districts are seen as rural or small rural, 148 out of the total amount. And the other piece that is incredibly important as we dive into how we created the roadmap is the fact that in Colorado, we are a strong local control state. So as we thought about those two things moving into the collaboration to create the roadmap, we knew it was important that school districts, local school boards, educators would have the flexibility to adapt to their own kind of set of standards, their own environment. We also really approach this through the lens of how might AI really address some of the equity gaps that are true across the nation and across our state. Thinking about, a third grader out on the northeastern plains who might not have access to a tutor or some of the same resources that a child in the metro area would have. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And as we're doing that, the third piece that's really important when we're thinking about Colorado and policy and legislation is that we already have in our laws and in our policies a very high bar for student data and privacy. One of the previous speakers spoke about vendors who are kind of flooding the market right now. And that definitely is something that we are thinking about. And we know that student data privacy really is the foundation to anything and everything we do. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about the process that we followed. What you're going to hear, I hope, is very validating because it is so similar to what has been shared already. And if you take the time to actually go into the roadmap, and I'll give you the QR code and we'll make sure you get the links following this meeting today, you will see that we reference groups that you've already heard from today, including their documents in our resources section. So many of the same themes have emerged. So back to process. We pulled together over 100 stakeholders about a year ago and co-created our roadmap for AI in K-12 education. Those stakeholders included K-12 leaders and educators from all different grade bands and levels. It included post-secondary, it included industry partners, it included family members, nonprofits, and with those folks, we created one steering committee, and thank you to Joanna, who was part of that, as well as some other close partners from the Department of Education, and 5 different working groups. We also had student advisors as part of the group, and I will tell you, the students pushed our thinking multiple times. They came in and they spoke to steering committees and working groups. They shared their experiences, and they really prompted us as the adults trying to make great decisions to put their needs and their experiences first. Okay, let's go to the next slide. We honestly thought we would be leading with policy. One of our working groups was actually solely dedicated to policy. Instead, as we worked through this over 9 months, we found that the work and the recommendations and the writing that came out of the different working groups and then the steering committee really coalesced around 3 main themes. And we decided to lead with one that seemed to be the most compelling, and that was reshaping teaching and learning. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. Again, keeping an eye on the time. Second one was really thinking about equity and what that means for our kids, every child across the state of Colorado, and how might we utilize AI to advance equity. And then the third section is about policy and transparent and ethical use. The QR code that you see here, as well as the link, and you'll receive this as a follow-up, the QR code takes you to the roadmap, and you'll see in there, there's all kinds of links to resources, as well as our working groups created frameworks and checklists and tools that we thought might be really helpful. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. I'm going to highlight just 2 sections in here. And again, you'll see it throughout the roadmap, but we, like the other groups, thought a lot about how AI has the potential to enhance the role of educators. And kind of that initial piece is, how might it lighten the load? What are the things that AI can do that will save our teachers time? In Colorado, like so many other states, we are facing gaps in terms of the workforce. We are struggling with retention as well as recruitment. It is a complex job, right? It's immensely human, and AI cannot do a lot of the things that teachers do, but it can lighten the load. So just a few of the examples are listed here, as well as one of our students really provided some great insight in terms of, you know what, AI can't replace teachers, but it sure can help in so many different ways. Let's go to the next slide. And I'm blazing because I know you can reference this, and I want to make sure we have time for questions. I also want to highlight in the roadmap what emerged in terms of the ways that AI can help students, again, right from the input from our students as well as educators across the state of Colorado. And similar to what you've heard already, it's got the potential to really personalize that learning. I think one of the most compelling things that we heard from kids, as well as we're beginning to hear this from educators, AI acting as a coach and sort of mediating thinking, as well as providing information and acting as a tutor. That's been pretty exciting as we've seen kids and educators increase their use. Let's go to the next one. Thank you. Again, this was elevated before, but I'd be remiss if I didn't just pause for a minute and remind us that AI will not replace educators. AI is at its core, it's a tool. It's a technological tool that we can and should be using to do better and more for our students. We talk about having our classrooms remain immensely human. AI cannot replace that kind of that emotional intuition, reading the classroom, for example. We want our students to think of it that way too. Their expertise matters. They cannot discern the accurate input or outputs that come from AI, for example, when they're using ChatGPT, if they don't have expertise to begin with. And that really speaks a little bit to what we heard earlier around the cognitive load and critical thinking. Let's go to the next slide. Again, I'm keeping an eye on the time. So the next two slides are just, and the two final slides I've got are just, really ways to think about, well, where would you start? We have a pilot going right now with 8 different districts in Colorado, 4 bigs and 4 smalls. And we began with some very foundational modules for educators. The common sense modules, if you've not already dug into them and experienced them, are fantastic for educators. There's a complimentary set for students. That's a great place to start. You'll see there are all kinds of resources that are populating the web, and different organizations are sharing. I put one in here that actually is sortable by content area, by grade level, by what your use case might be. That's a great way just to have folks kind of play around and see what is in there, as well as some policy guidance that one of our organizations that supports our small rurals has put out there. Let's go to the next slide. And then this is something that we have shared with our district and school leaders. It's important that you start with vision first, and that it is a very collaborative process. Again, as you've heard already, pulling multiple voices to the table to think together about what you want for students, and then working through what you see on the screen right there to create a plan. I am going to ask Joanna if she wouldn't mind sharing right now the screen that's got our statewide recommendations. I thought that might be helpful. This is in the roadmap. You'll have access to that. We didn't put it in the slides, but as I was listening to the other groups, I thought, oh my goodness, we probably should share that. And again, you've got access to it. We, in the roadmap, have a list of recommendations for schools and a list of recommendations for statewide organizations. We recently pulled together some folks who reviewed the statewide organization recommendations again, and they are not a ton different from, again, what you've heard already. And if we can't pull it, that's really okay. It's similar to what you've heard, establishing committees to continue to look at what's working and what's not working. We believe we need to do an audit of our internet access as well as device access in Colorado. We feel like that's pretty important. We are pulling together another group of students who will continue to advise our roadmap revisions, because as you probably have seen, things are changing on a regular basis. It feels like every few months, things are outdated already. And we will be doing regional summits to ensure that our educators across the state of Colorado are receiving the latest and the greatest. I'm going to turn it back over to Joanna to do the next set of slides.
Thank you. Can everybody still see my screen? I tried sharing it, but
Okay.
It came up on my screen but not others. So in our last minute and a half, I just wanted to talk briefly about, so what is the Colorado Department of Education doing as a state agency? And we've split it up into thinking about internal and external support. So as a state agency, we need to think about the way we engage with artificial intelligence, the way we align our policies with our Office of Information Technology through our governor's office, the way we engage with legislators around things like this. So when we created our own policies for internal staff, we thought about best practices, considering reviewing the terms and use of policies of any tool that we're going to use. And those can be tricky, so we have to pay attention to those for each tool, because they have certain things around data and who owns the data. While free tools are easy and cheap, they often don't have the same level of security around them. So one, we have to think about that internally for our own staff at the State Department, as well as sharing that information out to districts. Because who owns that data? Even if it's the co-pilot that's taking notes in your meeting, where does that data go? And if it's a really sensitive meeting, you might want to turn that off if you don't know. So things like this are things we're starting to educate our internal staff on. Then we also use fundamentals of using tools. What's the value of the tool worth the risk of using it at the state level? as well as some other training and policy things. And in my last 30 seconds, some things for you to think about within your questions. I know a lot's already been said by others. Partner is our first recommendation, much like the SERB, who formed their statewide collaborative. You know, all industries in Colorado are looking to leverage AI for multiple purposes. So it behooves us to partner and to think about our industry. Colorado is known for our post-secondary workforce readiness connections, our internships, things like this. So how do we partner with our industry professionals to help move this along in education? How do we leverage our allies in every region of our state to help move this for education so we don't have to do it alone? Stay informed. So what tools are being used to create or amplify instruction around, as West Virginia said, differentiation, personalized learning. We're currently looking at things for dyslexia and literacy, as well as tutoring, how to leverage those tools as a coaching tool, much like Karen said. Stay connected, preparing students, as I said, to use AI and to create AI. So how do we make sure that our kids are engaging and contributing to the field and prepared to do that? And then understand how and when to lean in. So we constantly are trying to be forward thinking, to anticipate things that are coming. As Jonathan had said, this is a fast moving industry, so it's hard to stay in front of that. However, what are the seminal things to keep focused on? I know it was mentioned to leverage your current use policies. You don't have to go after every single tool. There's no way to do that. But what are the undergirding things you need to think about as far as data use, data privacy, how things are shared? Those are the things you need to really zone in on more than the specific tools themselves. Colorado is also leaning into updating our essential skills to include digital and data literacy. So that's a part of the K-12 experience for kids, not just an add-on in their educational day. And then as a state agency, we have to think about how do we differentiate either policy or guidance and recommendations for those early adopters so we don't hold them back, and the late adopters, because we have several districts in our state who are pushing the envelope, and they always have. They're ahead of the State Department, they're ahead of our partners. And we lean to them to help inform that too. So with that, I will turn it back over to you for questions. I know that was really quick.
Thank you. That was really awesome. I so appreciate you providing that perspective. I just want to ask, maybe you could stop sharing your screen for a second. Do any of my colleagues have questions? Let's see. I'm going to go to
Delegate Kerr. Just jumping in here, Senator.
Good for you.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a question for Dr. Rollins or perhaps our friends from Colorado. You'd mentioned that AI is not going to replace a teacher, but not from a curricular standpoint, but rather from a pedagogical or administrative point of view. Are there opportunities for cost savings, or do you only see an opportunity for efficiencies? In other words, is it a net cost to a school system, or is there a net savings?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, Delegate Kerr. And I think that many of these same sort of questions have been around for decades and just taken different forms. I think when television was rolling into classrooms in the late 50s, I think people had similar questions of, what would this impact be from efficiency, finance, and everything like that. I think it probably tends to be more that it's there to make the teacher's job easier, and that it's really about just trying to streamline the way that they prepare and deliver their instruction.
So there will be a cost to the school system?
I'm not sure that I'm following about the cost of the school system.
Well, if you have
Ms.
to buy
Blodbeck also wanted to answer that.
Okay.
Sure, I can jump in a little bit, and I'm a year out of being a longtime superintendent and educator. So I've been thinking about, gosh, what would that mean? should I still be sitting in the superintendents that we work with? I think the answer is yes to both. There absolutely could be some cost savings when I think about our small rurals and trying to find tutors, for example, utilizing AI, knowing that your classroom teacher is still there. There's a cost savings there. We are about to dig into with Cisco some piloting with districts around use cases for operational needs, for example, food services, transportation, human resources. Again, not replacing people, but making the jobs more efficient. Now, over time, does that mean we could reduce the number of people in our, central transportation department? I think there's potential for that, but it's a little too early to tell. And again, the market is flooded with vendors right now, particularly around the curriculum and instruction. I think as the dust begins to settle, we'll see there are some cost savings to schools and districts, provided we're really thoughtful about the safety, the student data privacy, and then how we're keeping humans, keeping the experts right there. I don't know if that helps or not.
I think it did. He's nodding his head. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you both very much. I'm going to ask a question. I do reference Delegate Kerr. I think you no longer, but you were a university professor for quite a while. I am as well. So I'm also thinking of this with my legislative hat and my teaching hat. And one of our other colleagues who teaches, also like me at the University of Maryland, is using Brisk and telling me all about how AI tools make her a better teacher. I just downloaded it in the last hour with this reminder. My question goes back to Mr. Gagne. One of the things you mentioned in your part of the presentation was about the training of 3,000 teachers, and I didn't hear in what exactly. So I was a little more curious of what kinds of things were teachers getting training in that you were referencing. Oh, you have to unmute.
Okay, so we'll drop the link into do we have a chat?
We do not, unfortunately.
Okay, I will send the link to Donovan to Maine's website, but the Mississippi AI Network, the state network, is a collaborative of community colleges and the four-year universities across the state of Mississippi. And right now they're offering free courses for teachers in AI, for workforce and CTE, et cetera. And as of August, they had done 2,500 teachers had taken part in that free AI coursework. And they're using Intel's curriculum because they partnered with Intel directly. But they're offering those courses to teachers. One's an intro to AI. There are several levels of those courses, and they count towards CE for teachers. So, I mean, they've ramped up very quickly and are finding, huge success with that effort. And teachers across the state are taking advantage of it.
And do you know if they've done anything to evaluate how many teachers are actually using it and whether teachers see it as being valuable and useful? Because yes, I agree, it can be a very useful tool.
Yeah, no, I'm not aware of that, but Colin Napier, the executive director of the Maine network, is on the AI commission now at SREB. We can certainly ask about that. And one of our upcoming recs goes to this issue of, and it was raised by South Carolina, that we are going to need to consider common metrics and measures in some kind of way to, evaluate and monitor what's going on with AI? What's its impact? Is it having a positive impact? Where is it having a negative impact? And we've got to figure out how that's going to work going forward and who's going to do that kind of work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have no doubt that my co-chair has questions, but before that, I think she was saving herself before. So did any other colleagues have any questions to ask? We have our education chair too, who's here. Any questions? If not, the floor is yours, Senator Hester.
Thank you. And of course, Delegate Ebersol, any other members, if you come up with questions while I'm asking mine, feel free to raise your hand. I just had one kind of combination question for both Colorado and West Virginia. You guys have done so much in the past year. And I was curious, within your state agencies, like what did it take to get it done? Did you guys wind up hiring people? Did you hire a consultant? This massive stakeholder process that you did, was it done with existing resources, or did the State Department plus the locals, are they going to need a little bit of extra help to get this done? If either of you can answer that question, or both of you, that would be great.
I can start and I'll turn it over to Karen. We partnered. So the State Department didn't have money. Much like most state departments are cash strapped. So we really leverage our partners to support the work that we do in our state. And the Colorado Education Initiative is always on the forefront of pushing thinking. So I know they have some funding and secured some funding, so I'll let Karen talk to that.
Yeah, definitely. And no, too, about 15 years ago, we actually spun out of the Department of Education. So it's a very close partnership. We were fortunate to receive some dollars from the Gill Foundation to support the work to create the roadmap. But really along with that, it was a ton of volunteer time from the stakeholders who contributed. Without the positions and the dollars that we had at CEI, the Colorado Education Initiative, I'm not sure how we would have done it. You know, that was part of the reason that we stepped in. We again, we partner with CDE. We know that they are all sprinting, 150 miles an hour. We also very much tapped into some national organizations, AIEDU being one of them, ISTE being another one of them. And we found that people are very much willing to share at very often no cost because this is moving so quickly. But to answer your question about positions, I feel like that was the role that our organization played with the Department of Ed.
And I don't know that my answer is going to add a ton of context other than just in West Virginia, we definitely partnered with people out in the districts. I have technology specialists who've helped contributed to a lot of resources. Within the department, we didn't have specific positions dedicated just solely to AI. It was a team of us that came together and worked on that.
In your case, Dr. Rollins, did you have external partners who were helping you also?
We did convene a technical advisory committee of 5 external AI experts. We had members from West Virginia universities, people from outside the state that worked with school districts, as well as people that worked in the nonprofit sector.
Awesome, thank you. I think Delegate Ebersol does have a question. There he is. I'll turn it over to the Chair of Education.
Thank you to both of the chairs for allowing me to come into this meeting. And I wasn't sure that I should speak because I'm not actually on the joint committee, but I appreciate the offer to ask a question. And I was away for 5 minutes here. So if this question's been asked, just shut me down because I went away and I came right back. I'm curious for Dr. Rollins. He talked about giving guidance to local districts on procurement. I'm wondering if there has been any conversation about establishing a statewide AI that you would provide to, or at least require local school systems to use, so there would be consistency across the board. Also, probably it's a heavy lift for local districts, as Dr. Gagne pointed out. Some of them are better equipped than others. So has there been any look toward doing it at, writ large across the state?
Sure, I appreciate the question. Through our Microsoft Office 365, our educators already have access to Microsoft Copilot and have that capability. So far, we don't have more of the more intense cost-bearing solutions that allow for even more capabilities, but all of them do have at least access to that statewide. In terms of other procurement guidance and things, some of the considerations we're working on and the guidance that's going to be pushed out to the field is going to be more of those safety reviews and types of things that'll be pre-procurement.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to the chairs.
Dr. Pruitt, I think you had a follow-up as well, answer?
I do, and mine's very brief. Thank you, Madam Chair. When it comes to the resources or to the cost, I can't let the opportunity move without me just reminding us to think about the total, what I call the total cost of ownership. One of the things that we saw in particular with the COVID funds, we had lots of people buying lots of technology, but they didn't take into account what I call that total cost of ownership, meaning there's the purchase, but what about the cost for training? Because as I like to say, you can have great tools, but if you don't have people who can use them, they may as well stay in the shed. So having that, having a plan for how you would maintain and upgrade as necessary, all the different steps that may have cost associated, that even though you may make an initial investment, it really is not very helpful if you have to abandon it because you haven't taken into account all those other aspects. So I think that, like I said, we've seen that with the COVID money this year. We tried to help people think about that back during COVID because we saw it at the end of the Great Recession as well. But thinking about when it comes to technology, it's not enough just to purchase the license or the initial entrance. You've got to think about over the next 5 years, what are the different costs that might be associated?
Thank you for that.
Thanks. I have one last question, which if you could summarize in like 60 seconds, then we're gonna move on to our next panel. But that's just, to our folks from Southern Regional Education Board. If you were to give us as policymakers, some advice, like I see dangers of not setting state policy. I see dangers of setting policy too quickly, but AI is here. What would be the one kind of key recommendation you would give to the bunch of legislators that you have on this call?
Know that whatever policy you set now may need to change. And so making it so that it is going to be mutable over time. And this is where guidance is so much easier than legislation, because changing legislation is harder to do. Guidance you can change on the fly very quickly.
And I would say that Maryland already has a leg up because you are having this very committee. And so you're already digging in a way that we've seen in some other states where there's a knee-jerk reaction to policy, which actually is damaging. I think that the recommendation about, for me, one of the things that's most important in that initial set of recommendations is establishing that statewide network, so that as you guys are considering what policy needs to be made, and let's be honest, sometimes state agencies need a little prompting. Sometimes you've got to help with setting those guardrails. But the more informed you are, the better. And having something like that statewide network that informs you, you could also even set policy that allows for the guidance that Jeff was talking about, where you require guidance. But having this committee puts Maryland already at the fore, for where we've seen some other states that are like, oh, well, we think AI is scary, we're just going to eliminate it. Well, that's a horrible idea. But you also can't just say, hey, it's a free-for-all. I think there is some level of policy that's good. It's finding that right niche.
Thank you so much. I think we probably need to move on, but I really want to thank all of our panelists. You're welcome to stay to hear what Maryland is doing. They're up next. And once again, if you haven't sent us the tools and the resources that you mentioned, please send them to committee staff so that we can enter them and have them become a matter of public record. So moving on to panel 2, we have a fabulous lineup from the great state of Maryland. We're first going to hear from the Maryland State Department of Education. And we've got Alex Reese, Chief of Staff to the Superintendent. We've got Krishnana Tellur, Deputy State Superintendent of Finance and Operations. Sean French-Rushing, Assistant State Superintendent. Dr. Akila Eleni, Executive Director of Government Affairs. And Aaron Senior, Director of Digital Learning and School Library Media. You guys have about 15 minutes, and then we're going to move on to the Public School Superintendents Association and then select local school systems, who I will introduce at that time. So over to the State Department of Education. Whoever wants to kick us off, the floor is yours.
And I do want to thank you all for being here. And if there's something that the other states already described that we're doing too, maybe less can be said in those cases, and certainly not to read the slides to us. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. There's nothing worse than reading slides. Good morning, Chair Hester, Chair Kaiser, and thank you to the members of the Joint Committee. As Senator Hester mentioned, my name is Alex Reese. I'm the Chief of Staff at MSDE, and we really want to thank you for having us today as we talk about the use of AI in our K-12 schools. I come before you today as a former teacher and principal middle school principal, no less. So yes, there is a special place in heaven for me. But most important today, I am a believer in the power of using technology and other tools in support of our students, our teachers, and our families. So our team is really excited to join in this discussion today. I also want to extend gratitude from Superintendent Wright. Dr. Wright would have loved to join us today. She had committed a few months ago to deliver another presentation, but she does hope that the scheduling stars will align so that she's able to join an upcoming meeting or hearing. So I'm joined here by our team. Thank you, Senator Hester, for introducing our team. Mr. Fritz Rushing and Ms. Senior will be our lead presenters today. Mr. Tallur and Dr. Aline will close. But want to just make one note before I pass it to Mr. Fritz Rushing. You'll notice here that, as was just discussed a second ago, MSDE does not currently have a staff position dedicated to artificial intelligence. And I want to call this out as a gap for the department. As some of you may know, MSD is operating with roughly 200 fewer positions than we were in the era of the great Dr. Grasmick. So while Ms. Senior and members of our teaching and learning team are deeply committed to the work, we do, like other states, face some capacity limitations. What we've learned from conversations with members of this committee through our SCE colleagues just moments ago is that we can do a lot through partnerships. So we are planning to continue exploring philanthropic partnerships. You'll hear a little bit about that today. And I'm pleased to share that as we've engaged in our fiscal 26 budget development in the last couple of weeks and months, we intend to add a dedicated position to support this work. So we're really excited to see what's possible as we prioritize expanding our staff. So we want to honor your time today. We're going to jump right in. It is my pleasure to pass it to Mr. Fritz Rushing.
Thank you, Mr. Reese, and thank you guys you all for inviting us today. I'm Sean Fritz Rushing, and Assistant State Superintendent of Operations and Administration. In the early summer, late spring, we were tasked by our superintendent to create an AI education committee. And it was important for MSDE to get a broad mix of stakeholders in this committee. We have leaders in special education, career technology, professional learning. We have a member from the local education agencies from Calvert County, as well as a student member. Our main task in this committee was to find applications to help our teachers in lesson planning and building IEPs. When we were doing this, we realized that we needed to make policy guidelines and a framework for our local school districts. And so part of that, we started researching different options that we would have. And part of that was an internal survey that we sent to the LEAs. Part of that investigation was to find different professional groups that we could rely on and different educational resources that we could help share with the LEAs. In this AI education committee, we use it as a time to review or peer review documents that we have or any type of guidelines. I and myself, I'm in IT, and the senior is in professional learning, but so we wanted to make sure that any guidelines that we have would fit for career technology education. Special education, etc. So speaking of the committee, I did want to drill down on the survey when we were trying to build these guidelines and frameworks for the LEAs. We need to know, what's working, what's not working. Do you have policies? Do you not have policies? We submitted this survey to help guide that framework. We submitted this survey to the heads of technology and cybersecurity and digital learning leaders in curriculum. We targeted these two types of professions, so we would not get a whole lot of static. We wanted to make sure that the information we received was accurate. 18 of the 24 LEAs responded, with 3 of the larger ones and 15 of the smaller ones. Just some high level of the information that we received. We did find out that 10 of the 18 respondents have already implemented generative artificial intelligence. The largest group were teachers, I was quite surprised. And 8 of the 18 mentioned increased productivity. And I find that as a teacher, Mr. Reese, I was a former middle school teacher as well, teaching multiple content areas. If I had this platform, it would have made lesson planning a whole lot easier back in the day. Other areas that we've noticed that they were having success, and I do want to point out one is equity. We thought equity was going to be a challenge for the LEAs, especially during the digital divide that we had during COVID, because some of these AI tools were relatively cheap. We believe that this could help bridge that equity gap. Other areas that people mentioned were cost savings, improved skills, training, etc. But there were some challenges that we've noticed in the survey. 3 of the 18 LEAs that responded did not have a generative AI policy. 8 received community objections of the 18. Funny fact, many of the objections came from teachers themselves. So we have teachers are on the broad spectrum. We have ones that are using it quite well in the classroom, and then we have many teachers who are objecting. Other concerns of which we are not surprised are like data privacy, cost, and that's the overall cost, because the tool could be cheap to implement, but the operations and maintenance costs for the years after could blow up. So in August 2024, after DoIT released their interim guidance, it was important for MSDE to create our own AI cybersecurity policy. So in August 2024, we shared with the LEAs, we based this policy on SB 818, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, because they just released the year prior their AI risk management framework. NIST is similar. If you guys are not familiar with NIST, it's to do it for the federal government. It provides guidelines for federal agencies. So it was important to MSDE that we used all 3 to create our AI guidelines. I don't want to bore you with the AI policy details, but we do go over like what is generative artificial intelligence, what are the prohibited items that you should not use, such as PII, which is private identifiable education. In this, we outline items like you should not use this for HR items, or you should not use this for student enrollment in academic programs, because there are some ethical and legal issues with using artificial intelligence for any type of enrollment. Like it was stated earlier, we do need to update. The world of AI is moving faster than our policies on AI. In the next coming months, we will have an update for prohibited items, like was mentioned earlier, especially using those AI meeting notes. When you're talking about student data, where is that data being stored? That is PII. So we need to make sure that we update our cybersecurity policy within the next 2 months. Once that is updated, we will make sure to share it with the local school systems. And I will bring it over to my fabulous counterpart, Ms. Erin Senior.
Good morning. Recently, MSD launched our Artificial Intelligence Hub. It's now live on MSD's eConnect Canvas Learning Management System. There is a shortened link at the top of this slide for those of you who may be interested in further examining this site. Through this hub, educators can now access a wealth of practical resources about AI in education. Some of these resources were actually mentioned earlier by colleagues that were in the site, such as Common Sense. The hub also brings together everything from national and state guidelines and policy documents to classroom-ready tools. These tools are all organized by grade level to make it easy for teachers to find exactly what they need. Teachers will find lessons, toolkits, and strategies to bring AI into their teaching in meaningful ways. The initial rollout is just the beginning. MSD is going to continuously be adding to the existing resources that are in there, and we are looking to expand the hub to include new sections specifically for students and families, and we are working on the family section right now with the hope to have it rolled out in the end of January, beginning of February. You heard earlier from Stephen and Jeff regarding the Southern Region Educational Board AI Commission work. MSD has recently joined this committee to help inform and ensure that Maryland creates high-level frameworks and resources that are in alignment with national recommendations, and those guidelines have been and will be released. Recently, the Southern Region Educational Board's Commission on Artificial Intelligence in Education, as you heard, convened over multiple leaders in education and businesses to chart a course for how AI is used in classrooms and how to prepare people for a workforce transformed by technology. The Maryland State Department of Education, as a committee member of this 2-year commission, will review research, industry data, and provide opportunities for us to hear from education experts so that that can inform what we are doing as we're moving forward to ensure that what we do is high quality and will have a great impact on what's occurring within our schools and then classrooms. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sean to provide some insight on 2 other collaborative endeavors that MSD has actively been involved in.
When we commissioned the survey for the local education agencies, we realized that policymaking was identified as an area of concern. So when we were invited by the state board member, Dr. Golson, to facilitate a workshop at the MD K-12 AI Leadership Conference, we were very excited. We decided to, instead of a lecture, to build a workshop on helping the LEAs and other different educational organizations on how to build effective AI policies. Many of the items that were identified in the survey were also identified in this workshop. We need to make sure that we have cybersecurity handled. We make sure we identify items that should not be uploaded into artificial intelligence, as well as cost. Another work session that we're working with is the Maryland AI Subcabinet with the Department of Information Technology. We are working with our sister agencies across the state of Maryland to build a 2025 AI roadmap. Many of the information that we're sharing with you today and the AI hub that Ms. Aaron Senior has built, we're using for that roadmap. So a lot of the information that we're sharing today, you'll get to be able to read about in the report.
To further our commitment to AI in education, MSDE is actively collaborating with our colleagues and stakeholders to identify and share existing resources, as well as to gather valuable insights. These insights will inform the ongoing development of a comprehensive AI framework and supporting resources tailored to the specific needs of Maryland schools. Since we've already talked a lot about the Southern Regional Educational Board in this meeting, I'm going to skip over a little bit this first bullet and going farther into it. Just know that we are a member of this and will be involved in this as it goes on. But we are also now a member of Teach AI, and we participate in intergovernment agency meetings with them. Through these engagements, we are able to network with representatives from other state education departments, share existing AI implementation resources and best practices, and develop collaborative partnerships for future AI initiatives in education. In a recent meeting, attendees received overviews of resources, updates on ongoing Teach AI literacy work, and presentations from Matt Winters from the Utah State Board of Education. Stephen Pruitt was there as well from SREB, and Oksana Pashika from the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine. Additionally, MSD will be a member of the Teach AI Literacy Advisory Group, and the first meeting of this subgroup is scheduled for tomorrow. By participating in these committees and work groups, MSD aims to stay well informed about emerging AI developments, share resources and collaborate with local and national agencies, and contribute to the development of professional learning opportunities for educators in Maryland schools.
Ms. Senior, we have if you could hit the highlights for us, that would be great. We're just kind of running up on time.
Yeah. In our Digital Learning and School Library Media Collaborative meetings, which represents all of the school systems throughout Maryland, and it represents their supervisors and leaders, we have been able to provide them with a variety of professional learning opportunities. We've hosted a panel discussion with table talks from 3 of the school systems. We have invited speakers in to talk to these individuals from the different LEAs. So Zach Chase came in, Jason Green has come in, who is also an author and a national speaker on AI. We continue to facilitate work sessions that these leaders from throughout all of Maryland's districts can come into and talk about. And we are hosting monthly dialogue meetings, e-communities, professional learning opportunities, and we're going to share all of these resources and continue to share and allow opportunities for our LEAs to collaborate. There's also an AI pilot program with Conmigo that is going on right now. This partnership was launched between MSDE, the governor's office, and Rockefeller Foundation, who was a philanthropic donor. This is going on currently and through school year 25-26, as this is a 2-year program. Conmigo is an AI-powered tutoring system from Khan Academy that works with teachers, with students, and with families as they go through this. And we are looking to see how this is going to enhance instruction, how this is going to personalize student learning, and how this will assist educators in tailoring lesson plans to meet diverse student needs. Dorchester County, it says, has approximately 2,300 licenses that are from all of their students in 6th through 12th grade. Baltimore County has approximately 2,800 licenses that was distributed across 12 middle schools with a specific focus just on 8th grade math and helping with Algebra 1 readiness before they take the test, which goes along with our CCR standards. And now I'm going to turn it over to the looking ahead slide of what we will be doing in MSDE.
Thank you, Ms. Senior. Krishna Talur, Deputy Superintendent for Operations and Finance. We have, as part of our ongoing work, our next steps are to provide continuous updates and guidance related to MSDE's AI policy that will include the relevant updates as well as additional appendices, next steps of the continued improvements for our AI hub, and a collaboration support in summer of 2025. As Mr. Reese mentioned earlier, we are also actively working on adding to our capacity to our team to continue dedicated support. And Ms. Senior mentioned the Rockefeller Foundation's philanthropic work that's associated here. MSDE is actively engaged in philanthropic collaboration in various areas of our work, and we continue to look forward for additional opportunities in this area. As our other presenters from other states have mentioned, MSD is actively working in those areas as well. And let me turn the presentation now over to Ms. Akil Elaine for closeout and facilitating questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Krishna. Can you all see me okay? All right, let me proceed just for the sake of time. So yes, I would just like to close out by first of all thanking Chair Hester and Chair Kaiser for the opportunity for us to talk with the committee today and to share what MSD is doing. I just want to reiterate that, as Sean and Aaron had shared in the presentation, MSDE is currently engaged with AI from a regional level down to state as well as local with the work that we're doing with the LEAs. So moving forward ahead of the upcoming session, we're definitely looking forward to continuing this conversation, continuing to have meetings with all of the legislators here, including some who we've had conversations with last year. Senator Hester, thank you so much, as well as Delegate Ebersol, Delegate Young, and some others as well. So again, we look forward to continuing this conversation, and we'd like to move it over to questions. Chair Hester and Chair Heiser, will turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And actually, we're going to do what we did with the previous panel. So if all the members would just log their questions for MSDE, we'll then ask a combined set of questions for everybody at the end. And so I think at this point, we will turn it over to Pazam. And hold on. I believe we have Mary Pat Fannin and then several superintendents. Is that correct?
We have one superintendent and several representatives from the LEAs. And so I'm going to pull up our presentation. I apologize for the double screens. My IT department had to go to school today. So, okay. So, as Chair mentioned, my name is Mary Pat Fannin. I'm the Executive Director of the Public School Superintendents Association. Thank you so much for having us today. We're going to talk about some pretty practical applications that are happening in our LEAs. We have a wide variety, and I have let everybody know that you're in a tight time schedule. So we're going to have 10 minutes for our first panel, but everyone else is going to try to wrap up in 5 minutes. I did a quick informal survey, nothing like MSDE did, but just wanted to quickly say, folks are really mostly in the development of AI policies. A lot of the feedback that I received was that they may not have AI specific policies, but policies that cover technology or cheating or other academic topics would apply to AI. So there are certainly some, and you can see on the graph there, that do have AI specific policies. But for right now, that's sort of where folks are. And you heard about the work that MSD is going to be doing with the LEAs to develop those. The other thing that I really hadn't thought about, but the tools that are already built into the systems that we've talked about, like Google Gemini and Microsoft Copilot, they require licenses that you have to be 18 and older. So there are some age restrictions in some of those tools too that really hadn't dawned on me until listening to some of the other presentations. So we do have some creative uses of AI going on in the districts. This is just a quick list. I'm not going to go through them. At the very end of the presentation, I do have a slide with some other resources. And one of the things I'll just point out is a really cute video from Wacomico Middle School that the kids put together a song in appreciation for their assistant principal using AI. And so it was really kind of cool. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Rogers and her team to talk a little bit about what Baltimore County is doing. Actually, can't see if.
So my name's Dave Stovenauer. I don't see that Dr. Rogers has joined yet. I am happy to continue unless you want to wait because she is supposed to join.
Okay, let's hop then to Harford County because I really would like to have Dr. Rogers speak. So is Dr. Barwick on?
I am here.
Okay, great. I'm gonna let you and Tracy go ahead and give us a quick update.
Good morning. My name is Martha Barwick. I'm here with Tracy Pappenshock. I'm the Supervisor of Innovation and Learning, which includes library media, and Tracy is one of our esteemed librarians in our district. In Harford County, we are just beginning our exploration of AI. We actually started last year with our librarians to really spend some professional development time to explore with a focus on the ethical foundation of the use of AI. At this point, we're really looking at how can we use AI in our work to be more efficient as professionals and to increase our productivity, as well as looking at some examples of how we can explore curriculum development. While we are engaging our early adopters and really looking at possibilities, we are also engaged in work to build foundational documents. So this slide just references some of the ideas that we're sharing with our school leaders and also could be teachers as well on just ways that AI can save time and help them produce products for meeting agendas or newsletters, developing professional development sessions. On the next slide, you'll see some actual work that I was engaged in with our science supervisor and a science curriculum writing team. And again, this was exploratory. We haven't used this information yet, but we were really working together to see what AI could do for us. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see our prompt. Using a framework that we've designed, can AI actually produce an output, a deliverable for us to help us engage in the development of curricular units, pacing guides. On the next slide, we actually went after we're really impressed by what AI could do and thinking through, the time-saving piece just in developing that course. Can we take a piece of that course and actually ask AI to prompt us with a student assignment? And so you'll see an example of that. And again, we were very impressed by if we were very specific with our prompt and able to to develop exactly what we want, to prompt AI with exactly what we were looking for. The output really gave us a lot to work with. And I'll turn it over to Tracy to talk about our next prompt.
So as a teacher, I'm always looking for ways that I can save time on tasks that traditionally take me a while, and creating rubrics is one of those things. And so in this example, we used Claude to help us to create a grading rubric. And then I can interact with the AI and tell it, I want you to adjust this category, or I want you to add this category. Or if I'm assessing students in multiple ways, then I can have it create multiple rubrics. And this is a huge time saver for me as a teacher. On the next slide, this is an idea of how we can use AI to help us to differentiate materials, whether that is to differentiate reading levels. We could ask it to differentiate activities that the students will do, or even differentiate assessments. And on the next slide, this is actually an example. One of the librarians in our district created an interactive game for students to help students review citations. And so then they would get immediate feedback. And so the game took him a little bit of prompting and some prompt adjustments to get it to be exactly the way he wanted it to be. But this is an excellent idea, sort of gamified learning citations, which isn't every student's favorite thing, but turning it into a game certainly helps. And finally, I use AI to support just things I do in general, such as helping me to write emails, to polish directions, to polish my objective writing, and even to rewrite things at a different reading level.
Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead on to Prince George's County. I don't think Dr. Rogers is on yet. So we have Andy Zuckerman.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us today. I think what I'd like to just highlight from Prince George's County for our legislators is this is moving so fast, as you all mentioned earlier, that we felt, and I think a lot of LEAs feel this, we don't necessarily have the deep subject matter expertise in AI and generative AI, and we're learning, like you're hearing from my colleagues in other districts, about how to implement this at scale, implement AI. So we quickly partnered with a nonprofit called AI EDU. We did this back in June of 2023, who is based in Silicon Valley and just has a lot more expertise than school districts do in AI. And so our approach is really to focus on creating the conditions that our teachers, our principals, our staff can be successful using these tools. A little bit of a less of a top-down approach and more of a bottom-up approach. So we've got multiple partnerships in place. We, for example, we even worked with Harvard Graduate School of Education doctoral students last year who are a little bit younger and a little bit more tech savvy, who created a really robust framework for us to think about how to implement AI. So we've got lots of different pilots happening across our district. Our goal, we believe very strongly, is to have the guardrails in place to make sure that data security needs are met, data privacy needs are met, and really create more of an innovation lab, innovation incubator approach to this work. So we do have Conmigo. I heard Aaron talk about it. We have about, I think, 13,000 licenses that's funded through a grant that we're implementing this year for all of 9th grade plus select courses in high school. And our educators who are involved in that are going to be just on the ground action researchers for us. Adobe Firefly is a pilot we have in creative arts. We're using Brisk. I heard Delegate Kaiser talk about that. We have about 200 to 300 teachers in a pilot for that on lesson planning, unit planning, grading. We put Watson chatbot on our website. That hasn't been as great as we'd hoped, to be honest with you. A lot of good lessons learned there. So that's just on the communication and use of customer service. And we did purchase Gemini and Copilot premium licenses I heard a different state talking about Office 365, and that's the consumer standard product, which certainly is available for everyone. We are, particularly us, we were hit with a cyber attack a year ago, so we are deeply concerned about data privacy, and so very interested in premium licenses, which are super expensive, but interested in them because it's just much more secure from a data privacy standpoint. We do have a pretty well-developed training plan and sequence for our staff. We've trained, I think, about a third of our teacher workforce, about 3,500 teachers so far. And so this is sort of our scope and sequence, fundamentals of AI, teaching about AI. You can see it here. This is done in partnership with that nonprofit AI EDU, who I was telling you about, because they are just much stronger in this than we are. That being said, when you have a workforce of 10,000 teachers like we have some rock stars when it comes to this. So we're lifting those voices up. We have people running circles around others when it comes to the use of technology in education. And also specifically the use of AI. So they're really, really driving this conversation, and we're making sure that we've got the guardrails in place. To that end, the last thing I'll say, credit to our school board, who I think is pretty much in the vanguard of AI policy. They came out with a policy last school year. So we do have a board policy on AI. And now we are in the phase of developing a school district administrative procedure off of that board policy. So that's our work this year. And that's done in collaboration, obviously, with our teachers, our students, our parents, through our technology advisory committee. But it's a learning curve for all of us. So it's exciting, and we're just grabbing hold of it like everybody else. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Howard County before Dr. Rogers is going to join us, and I'm going to play a quick clip.
Analysis. At the Maryland Innovation Center in Columbia, these Howard County High School students are getting certified training that's putting them years ahead of their peers when it comes to the fields of data analytics and data science.
We're hoping that they don't get to college because they'll have the skills that they will be able to go.
Did anyone else lose the sound?
I lost the sound.
Okay.
Looks like it's almost over. Mary Pat, I don't think it's working. So we just turn it over to a live person?
Yeah, sorry about that. Again, like I said, my IT department is at school. Okay, Daniel or Amanda, are one of you on?
We are. We're both here together. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dan Rosewag. I'm the coordinator of career and technical education for the Howard County Public School System. As a system and as a career and technical education program, we are actively trying to embed increased opportunities and experiences for our students within our computer programming and computer science career academy pathways. But for today, we're going to focus on what you weren't quite able to hear with the video, which are some of our Apprenticeship Maryland program opportunities that are provided in the area of AI, and I'm going to turn it over to our two apprenticeship experts, Ms. Stephanie DeCeplo and Ms. Amanda Malone.
Hi. We have a partnership with Health Tech Alley. They're an employer partner in our Apprenticeship Maryland program, and they're offering an analytics and data science youth apprenticeship opportunity for our high school seniors to gain hands-on experience in artificial intelligence and data science while working with them in digital health and data analytics sector. So the 5 youth apprentices represent Glenelg, Mount Hebron, Oakland Mills, and Reservoir High School. They work 20 hours a week, at Health Tech Alley. Health Tech Alley is a nonprofit organization that partners with public and private institutions to support digital health, health IT, and data analytics initiatives. Their mission is to foster the workforce and organizational capabilities needed for the future of healthcare. This apprenticeship provides a unique blend of technology education and real-world application. The students engage in specialized training focused on AI, machine learning, and data science while conducting year-long research projects. Additionally, they are earning certifications in applying these technologies to different fields such as business development and customer acquisition.
The apprentices' work schedule includes 4 days on site at the Maryland Innovation Center in Columbia, and they work remote on Fridays. They recently completed the industry-recognized credential Google Data Analytics and are currently advancing through the second Google Data Analytics Advanced course. They're also exploring the addition of the AWS AI Foundation certificate to their credentials. Collaborating with startups and nonprofits is the key aspect of the program. For instance, they recently worked with App Beacon using data science to improve customer engagement, streamline onboarding, and reduce support questions. They also gained exposure to the Gamma.app, an AI-powered presentation generator, enhancing their technical expertise. This apprenticeship program aligns with the region's growing demand for tech talent, particularly in cybersecurity, where demand continues to outpace supply, spurred by the area's designation as the tech hub by the Economic Development Administration. This experience helps prepare students to contribute meaningfully to the future of tech and healthcare industries.
Great. Thank you guys so much. And Dr. Rogers is on now, so I'm going to pop back to our Baltimore County slides.
Thank you. And good morning, everyone. It's still morning, technically.
Good morning, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. We really appreciate the opportunity to share some of the exciting work happening in Baltimore County Public Schools. This slide just speaks to our strategic plan and our priority. We have 4 areas, with academic achievement being the most important area. We know that learning is our core purpose, and really are pleased to share with you how AI is helping us to move our students forward, particularly in literacy, which is the foundational skill that they all need to be successful in all areas. So last year was our first year of implementation for a new literacy curriculum in elementary school. We're using Into HMH for our students, and a part of that curriculum, it is obviously steeped in the science of reading and aligned to state standards, but a part of that curriculum is an AI tool called Amira. And I think in a slide or so, I will show you what Amira looks like. But Amira allows our students to get onto their devices with their headphones on, our youngest learners, and they practice reading. Based on what they say when they're practicing. Amira gives them on-the-spot feedback and is able to identify their progress and able to identify little small lessons for the students to continue to improve their proficiency. We are also very pleased with Amira because it takes all subjectivity out of our ability to assess our students' level of reading proficiency. It provides additional time for our teachers. In the past, teachers had to assess students one at a time, and so it would be typical that it would take a week to assess your class. Amira does that on its own, and this slide really shows you the graph shows you that our students who are practicing with Amira frequently, and we define frequently as 30 minutes per week. So it's nothing that's unreasonable. That's a little more, it's 6 minutes per day, that they are growing at a faster rate, faster pace in terms of growth in reading than students who are not. So we made that a significant focus for us as a school system. And then this slide shows you the same group of students from last year to this year. The red are students who are reading below grade level. Green represents students who are reading at or above grade level. What you can see is students who were in grade 1 last year, those same students moving on to grade 2, a lower percentage of students reading below grade level from the very beginning of the year. So that also accounts for summer slide, which is promising for us, showing that the skills that they're learning with Amira in particular are sticking. But if you look at the bottom the bottom chart, you'll note the students who are reading at or above grade level. Same group of students from 1 year to the next, the level of growth is significant. To give you a school perspective, we highlighted a specific school that came to speak to our Board of Education about the practices and how they made that shift, because it's very different in some respects from work that we've done. The young lady that you see on this slide is Amira. Teachers have teachers, reading specialists, staff development, teachers, as well as principals and assistant principals have chosen to dress up as Amira to, excite the students and the families even more. You see one school, Westtown Elementary School, the data disaggregated by grade level. Their school practices Amira with fidelity, meaning, again, 30 minutes per week for students. Nothing that is, beyond reasonable. And the level of growth across grade levels in the school from the beginning of the year to the end of the year when students were assessed. And then when you look at our student groups for the same school, what we're excited about is how Amira is able to differentiate the needs of our students receiving special education services, as well as our multilingual learners. And so you see the multilingual learners have almost caught up in the school to the all students group who are using Amira with fidelity, and our special education, our students receiving special education services have made some significant gains in their progress from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And really what has been new, what has been different is we're using a new curriculum, but there is that regular practice on fluency, on phonics, and on those micro differentiated lessons tailored to the students happening on a regular basis. It is one of the centers that you're used to that students in elementary school rotate through centers. Amira is one of those centers. It's built into the regular classroom practice. It is very easy to use. It adapts to dialects and accents that students have, and there are mechanisms, and Dave Stovenauer may speak to this, where teachers are able to put some inputs that allow Amira to really respond to the needs of the students in the classes that are in front of them. And so we're very excited about what the data looks like. We have it for the entire system. It's looking very good year 1, and year 2, we're continuing to move forward. I'm going to turn it over to Dave Stovenauer, our director, who will share a little more information and let you see Amira, hopefully.
So, Mary Pat, I don't know if you want to show that video. Oh, I see you are. Thank you. And hopefully we get some sound with this one. And if not, that's okay. Amira, essentially,
Whose computer is this on? Because maybe that needs to be unmuted.
Mary Pat, I don't know if you can
It's-
hear us, but if
it's
you
me.
unmute, then I think we'll be able to hear the video.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Is accountable.
How's that?
Reading every day. Students read for about 10 minutes each day, and Amira uses interventions based in the science of reading to give students real-time support in the right skill at the right time.
Say watch 3 times as fast as you can. Watch.
Students who read consistently with Amira see double the growth in their reading fluency, the kind of gains that were previously only possible with a human tutor. And like a great teaching assistant, Amira saves you time on grading assessments and provides you with valuable insights about how to support your readers.
Holly was a carrot. Only food was a carrot.
Ready to go? Let's get reading.
So Amira is an AI tool built into the reading curriculum. And so it is able to give students real-time data and teachers real-time data as to how those students are performing. One of the concerns that comes up consistently with a tool like this is data privacy and the security of those tools. So I'm going to speak a little bit to some of that. We have in Baltimore County an extensive student data privacy rights document that we use with all of our vendors for software applications. Though that document covers liability, security, data sharing practices. We make sure that our data is ours and that it can be deleted and scrubbed in a timely manner if there's a problem. I will tell you, PG County referred to this when they were speaking about the response from a cyber attack. As you know, or may have heard, Baltimore County underwent a devastating cyber attack, and it was because of our relationships with those vendors in many cases, and the requirements of our student data privacy rights that we were able to recover as quickly as possible. Speaking specifically about AI policy, we, at the recommendation of the board, in IT and in CNI, met with our colleagues in the Office of Law, reviewed our student handbook, our technology acceptable use policies, any current board policies we had about student conduct or about technology, and any copyright laws that apply. And at that time, this was a year ago, we determined that we were not going to pursue a separate AI policy. And the reason for that was because we really feel like our existing policies cover emerging technology as it comes to market. So AI is simply the newest thing. I think we're already anticipating the next disruptor could be augmented reality as we look down the road, and Apple releases and Meta releases new products that our students will interact with. So we made that determination that we did not believe that we needed a separate AI policy at that time. We did put out some position statements that I've linked here. Our Evergreen Environment and AI position statement is available on the web. Ultimately, what we said was that we made a decision to live in an evergreen environment. So when Microsoft or Google or any of our other partners releases new information or new upgrades to their system, which, as we know, will include AI tools, we will integrate them as best we can. The example given in this position statement was the idea that a Copilot preview was available in our Microsoft 365 environment. We did not block it for our staff members. It is blocked for our students. But we wanted our staff members to begin to explore and learn how they could integrate this into their learning environments and into our offices for efficiencies. And so again, I have linked that there for you. The last thing that I have there is our software review process. And I think this refers back to our student data privacy rights, which is we have an extensive software review process that we go through. We partner with some of our other partners like One EdTech or COSIN to make sure that we have the most up-to-date information on the vendors that are available to us. We require, in many cases, vendor participation in our software review process, where we have participants from our CNI division, from cybersecurity, from our applications team, to make sure that we're reviewing SOC 2s and making sure that we're addressing any needs as we see come up related to security and data, especially around these AI tools that are now just being built into the tools that we want to use.
Thank you, David. That was awesome. And everybody. Mary Pat, is that the end of our fabulous lineup of what we're doing here in the state of Maryland?
It is, and sorry about the muting for the clip. And I will send this to staff so you all can have all the resources. And like I said, there's one last slide that just has some other bits and pieces of what folks are doing, especially that video of the kids writing the song with AI.
Great, awesome, thank you. I of course have questions, but I want to open it up to everybody else. I see Delegate Bartlett first out of the gate. Over to you, Delegate Bartlett.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for that presentation. It was super helpful. And I know that it works. My daughter, when she was younger, this was Mary wasn't, I don't think it was out yet, but it was a tool that there was a tool that she used for learning to read at school. In a private school. So, and it was just super, super helpful. One thing that I'm concerned about, and, we see it with, social media coming about, and that is a student's inability to interact with others. And so one question I have is, and I guess this is for, where'd he go? I don't see him anymore. Oh, there he is. Okay. I think Mr. Stovner or Dr. Stovner gave me the closest. It would be the closest person to answer this question, perhaps. And if not, then if you can pivot. So, what are we doing with respect to the social interaction skills that are lost in the education world with AI? Now, mind you, what I prefaced it with what I said about my daughter, and that was almost probably 15 years ago. Okay, but I'm concerned about while AI will not replace a teacher. We got that from the first group, and I agree with that. But as far as the bond with the teacher or other students, there's been a lot of reading that has done with or learning to read by reading out loud and things of that sort. So those are some questions. That's my question. I see a lot of heads nodding, so you understand where I'm going with this. Just the reality relationship building, because we already have kids who are building relationships with non-physical devices. So what are we doing to help with that risk of building relationship with, again, an extra non-physical device? Thank you.
So I'm going to answer kind of quickly at first, and then I'll expound. I've given some talk about AI and what I feel are the impacts of that to several of our advisory groups and some of our curricular teams. And my overriding message there is that nothing in technology or anything else will replace the relationship between a student and the teacher. And I try to encourage everyone to remember that as they move forward. Let me answer more specifically now. When it comes to something like Amira, my belief, my understanding is that while the computer program itself, the AI tool, is giving feedback, it's also incumbent on the teacher to be reviewing that and then interacting with the student appropriately where necessary. And again, we're talking about 30 minutes a week. Out of an entire week, we're only talking about 30 minutes of one-on-one time with an AI bot. The rest of that time is the relationship with the teacher. And I can also tell you we're a one-to-one district currently, and the usage from those devices tells me that the majority of time is not spent on devices. That the majority of the time that our students have is spent in I hate to use the word traditional, but I'm going to use it because I can't think of another one in this moment. Traditional instruction, where the teacher is presenting and working with either small groups or individual students. So I hope that at least addresses part of your question.
It does. And Madam Chairs, could I ask just one quick follow-up question? Okay, excuse me. Has there been, and this might have been for the other group, I apologize, but has there been research that has shown the effect of mental health development with using AI in education?
I am not aware of any currently that I could speak to. And so I don't want to misstate anything.
Okay, no worry. I'll follow up and do some research on that. Thank you very much for answering my questions. Thank you, Madam Chairs.
Yeah, no, thank you, Delegate Bartlett. I mean, I actually think that's a really good question. The issue, of course, then is that kids are on social media so much, and how would you differentiate the impact of social media from the impact of education? It's a really good question. So we have kind of run out of time. I had some questions I just wanted to leave you guys with, and maybe you could respond to staff. And I just wanted to check if anybody else, my co-chair, or other members, Delegate Ebersol, does anybody else have questions that they want to at least get on the record? Okay, then hold on. Where's my questions? Okay, so for MSDE, thank you so much for sharing the great work that you're doing. I'm delighted that you're going to hire somebody specifically to help with this. I was hoping that you could share with the committee the meeting materials and the guidelines that were shared with all the LEAs in August, just so that we can be completely up to speed. That would be great. Also, you and I talked a bit about this, but you know, I'm kind of curious if we have a handle on how all LEAs are dealing with the student data privacy issue. Like, I don't know if there's some kind of roll-up report where they report to the state every year, but it'd be great to have a snapshot of that. So those are two takeaways for MSDE, if you don't mind getting back to the committee with those. And then for the LEAs, I really enjoyed hearing how each one of you were doing something kind of a little different. And I also assume that because the four of you are here, you're probably representative of like the best that's going on in the state. And so maybe some other counties haven't done, you know, quite the level of work that you are doing. And so my question for all of you is, you know, at the state level, what could we do that would be helpful, like to make sure that all LEAs are getting their guidelines in place, that all LEAs have access to these reading tutors if they want them, to the partnerships with AI, EDU, or whoever it was. Like, what would you like to see the state do to kind of, as Colorado said, you know, elevate the great work that you are doing and make sure that we are providing the resources that all LEAs need? And so if the four of you could like work through Mary Pat to answer that question, that would be super helpful. Just then we'll know what you're looking for.
Will do. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Okay. So now we're moving on to our third and final panel of the day. This is kind of an annual tradition. The Department of IT is we really welcome your participation. They're able to provide an update kind of every year to this committee and what they've done. We asked the department to focus in on kind of an update on what they're doing in AI, what they're doing with IT modernization and cybersecurity. So three very broad categories. And with us to provide the update, we have Secretary Katie Savage, who will lead off her team, supported by Nishant Shah, our Senior Advisor for Responsible AI, Greg Rogers, the Chief Information Security Officer, Marcy Jacobs, Deputy Secretary and Chief Digital Experience Officer, and Jenny Smith, Senior Director of Strategic Investment. And so with that, I will pass it over to you, Madam Secretary. Thank you so much for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much to the members of the committee and to Senator Hester, and we really appreciate the opportunity to present. I will be very brief because I know we're running over time, but I wanted to just quickly speak to the agenda today, as Senator Hester mentioned. So Sarah, if you can go to the next slide. I want to talk briefly, just to ground everyone on our goals and priorities for the organization. Briefly spotlight organizational growth, and then as Senator Hester said, I'll turn it over to Nishant, Jenny, and Marcy, and Greg. So if you go to the next slide, these have continued to be my priorities since I stepped into the role. We're continuing to streamline our products and service offerings to offer things that are both quality and efficient. We are maturing our cybersecurity efforts, and then I can't fully place a check mark next to this one, but I set a goal of launching a digital services portfolio and team. And as you'll see in an upcoming slide, that is now a team of 10. So we're making good progress there. So you keep moving forward. Next slide. Great. Sorry, go back to the org slide, Sarah. So just again, to briefly highlight, I just really want to thank the team for all the hard work that they've been doing. The numbers under each of these verticals represent new hires from the beginning of July, the fiscal year 24, so July of last year, year to date. So you can see Nishant's whole team didn't exist. It's now a team of 3. Greg has added 14 to his team. Marcy's team didn't exist. It's now a team of 10. So we're continuing to make steady progress to help us accomplish the priorities that I just set out. And with that, I'll turn it over to the team to do a deep dive into some of these areas. So Nishant, I'll turn it over to you to kick off the work that you've been doing until recently as a team of 1 and now have grown to a team of 3.
Great, thanks, Secretary. And as Secretary Savage mentioned, I'm Nishant Shah. I'm Senior AI Advisor at Do It, and I'll be taking the committee through our work around AI. I'll start with a 2024 retrospective. I'll go into our evolving strategy for 2025. I'll speak to a new team that we're building out that Katie mentioned. And in the interest of time, I'll probably skip my last slide, but happy to answer any questions on it. So 2024, starting with a look back on this year, we really saw this year as the year to build out the very basic foundations to cohere a cross-government approach to AI, which is a particular challenge in Maryland, given the federated nature of our agencies. So step 1 was establishing mandates to motivate action in a specific direction. That came in the form of the governor's AI executive order in January, and then SB 818 in April and May. It also meant establishing an interagency forum to collaborate on executing those mandates, which came in the form of the AI subcabinet. So we cohered that group and started monthly meetings there in March. Step 2 was really to establish the initial baselines and strategy for what we call responsible use of AI, which would then subsequently unblock and give confidence to step 3, which is productive use, meaning experimentation and adoption. And those 2 steps kind of had to happen at the same time. So it's been a sort of building the plane while flying it sort of approach there. To go a little bit deeper on the responsible use side of things, we focused on a few areas. In May, we got in place a set of statewide guidelines for the use of commercial Gen AI tools. Those are things like ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini. In June and July, we established a partnership with a group called Innovate US to provide all state workers with free asynchronous training modules on leveraging AI in public sector work. And we are sort of at the moment, the midst of finishing up 2 other key artifacts, one of which is the first statewide AI inventory, and the second is an AI intake flow that essentially operationalizes the process of determining the risk level of an AI use case, and then B, what a risk assessment looks like to act on that risk level for things that are deemed to be high risk. So overall, on the responsible use front, there's a lot more to do here. And this side of things will continue to evolve as the technology does, but we'll end 2024 with a good V1 to start with. on sort of the productive use side of the equation, we focused here on getting in place key structures for longer term success and doing some low risk experimentation. So for example, in August, we kicked off a statewide AI community of practice, which really brings together, usually monthly, all the folks across agencies who are thinking about or leveraging AI in different ways. We also saw a number of experiments kick off to start learning from. And that took the form of decentralized adoption and experimentation with commercial productivity tools of the type that Gen AI guidance unlocked, but also deeper engagements. So, leveraging generative AI in licensing and permitting with the Maryland Department of Environment. The data team kicked off a design partnership with Tyler Tech around natural language data analysis on Maryland's open data portal. MD Think kicked off a set of proofs of concept around data analysis and document processing and internal chatbot use in partnership with AWS. There were also other pilots and procurements run by a variety of other agencies, in addition to a handful of new adopted tools there, all of which will be captured in the AI inventory if they are put into production. That said, adoption and uses in production are actually still quite low. And finally, just to note, to sort of round out the slide, we conceptualized and hired for an AI enablement team in DoIT, the first 2 roles of which will be starting in the coming, I believe, 2 weeks. So very excited for those people. And I'll speak a little bit more to that in 2 slides from now. So that brings us to 2025. We've separately shared with this committee a draft of our high-level strategy, as well as the SB 818 mandated plans. It's still iterating a bit as we get input from experts and agencies, but thematically, if 2024 was building the ground zero foundations, 2025 is really focused on building momentum and strengthening those foundations, essentially moving the state up the maturity curve and starting to get real things into production. So as a sort of quick synopsis of what's in that roadmap, our strategy has 5 components. The first is maturing the state's AI governance capabilities, and that really means taking this V1 process that we're in the midst of documenting, operationalizing it, and then iterating it to V2, V3, and onwards. And as those iterations progress, they should get better embedded into DoIT's intake processes, into state procurement practices, and really take into account sector-specific risks as well, and take advantage of sort of automation where possible. That, in turn, will unlock more impactful use cases that also require stronger guardrails. The second prong of the strategy is strengthening the state's data foundations. As we all know, garbage in, garbage out. We need to know what data sets are AI ready, and for those that aren't, a pathway to getting them there. That means formalized data governance processes, testing data sets for risk, strong labeling practices, approaches to leveraging synthetic data. And so the Office of Enterprise Data will be driving that work. And it's just really crucial to be able to move from successful proofs of concept to actually scaled solutions in production. The third component here is increasing momentum around experimentation and adoption. And so, as I mentioned before, we took a more opportunistic approach in 2024, and in 2025, we'll take a much more structured approach, particularly leveraging the new hires on the AI enablement team and in close partnership with the sub-cabinet, with teams across DoIT, other agencies, and external partners. That work will also help us develop clear operating models across the state. We're solidifying sort of the exact work streams here, but that could look like a bunch of different things. It might mean, for example, putting together a pretty diverse portfolio of 3 to 5 pilots tied to the governor's priorities. These would likely represent a range of use cases in sort of high impact, repeatable areas. It could mean ensuring that the workforce has the ability to do more decentralized experimentation, to start really getting a sense of the tasks that they can leverage AI for. Again, we're evaluating sort of the best approaches here, but it's likely some combination of establishing a sandbox that's available to all state staff to use chatbots, to facilitating hackathons, around specific problem statements where we provide tools and data sets and see what agencies can come up with, to formal pilots with commercial tools on existing platforms like Google's Gemini, for example. I think part of this work will also need to include how agencies should think about solutioning around AI. So, assuming there's a good understanding of a problem statement, how do they know it's actually an AI-shaped problem? Does the agency understand pricing implications of an OpEx versus a CapEx model? How might they quantify the return on investment with regards to AI solutions, given there's a lack of good baselines for pricing, and pricing is changing sort of on a quarterly basis? Do they have an approach, for example, to reviewing architecture and signing off for a vendor that a desired solution is actually fit for purpose? I think on that set of product questions, more clarity will be helpful there to set up procurements for success. The fourth major prong of the strategy for next year is increasing the state's AI IQ. So here we'll build on our work in 2024 by doing a number of different things, deepening our training offerings, ensuring more folks are taking those trainings, finding better pathways to get academic experts and students to create proofs of concept for agencies, strengthening the community of practice that we've implemented, and sort of expanding it to include counties and municipalities as well, and making a number of additional hires. And finally, fifth, like the major prong to round it out is studying and cohering state approaches in these 12 key domains. And these are really the SB 818 areas like economic development and workforce, cybersecurity, healthcare. We've included approaches for each. The sub-cabinet worked closely together to figure out what is a good approach in 2025. Who should the anticipated stakeholders be, an overall plan. In aggregate, the outputs from these by the end of 2025 will, I think, ensure that we have a solid foundation for the state for these different areas in a way that's grounded in data and trends and sort of constituent perspectives. Sarah, if you want to move to the next slide. So a lot of we were able to accomplish to date has really been by being pretty opportunistic and developing great partnerships with agencies and teams and external actors and sort of early adopters. That said, we haven't had much in the way of technical resourcing to execute pilots and infrastructure and testing and evaluation to date. So a major watershed here was solidifying funding a few months ago for an AI enablement team, which will help push elements of the state's AI work forward. I'll note that the fiscal note in SB 818 was particularly helpful in ensuring that we could, in fact, secure those funds. You can see on the slide what the AI enablement team's charter is, and sort of in the interest of time, I won't read through it. But one thing I'll highlight is that, where possible, the team is going to strive to incubate capabilities and transition them to existing teams across DO-IT in the state. An example here might be developing or testing tools to measure key model benchmarks for bias in a system, and then training folks in GRC or compliance or procurement teams to use that tool and to prove upon it when evaluating solutions. The first two folks on this team will be an AI product director who will lead the productive use initiatives that I outlined here. And the second will be an AI policy programs and governance director who will lead the responsible use initiatives. These two first hires are starting very soon, and they are fantastic. One is a former research scientist at AWS and an entrepreneur and a dual PhD in computer science and biomedical science. And the other is a product data and AI leader with a PhD in climate systems and particular expertise in using AI in physical infrastructure. So in time, we'll likely add a data scientist and a full stack ML engineer as well to really sort of be able to power real prototyping. I'll note sort of beyond the AI enablement team, there will be other role types that are crucial to get all this right across the state. An example is more technical attorneys, for example. In industry, we tend to call them product counsel and procurement folks. We could get there by training the right folks or by hiring the right folks, but ensuring we have people across agencies who have both decent technical IQ and depth in their particular fields will be, I think, increasingly important. So I think that is it on my end. I had one more slide where you know, the members of this committee will be getting invites to this event, and I'm hoping you're able to attend. But the concept there is bringing all the major AI labs together across the state and charting the art of the possible there. And happy to discuss that more offline if helpful. On to Marcy.
Thanks, Nishant. And thanks to the committee. Secretary Savage mentioned earlier, I'm Marcy Jacobs. I am the Chief Digital Experience Officer. I am leading the new Maryland Digital Service, which was created in January of this year. And this year for us has really been focused on building out new competencies with a lot of growth of the team, as Secretary Savage mentioned. Sarah, if you could go to the next slide. I'm going to talk at a high level about the organization and the team's priorities for the coming year. I do want to call out on this slide the boxes labeled oversight focus and intervention focus around some of these pillars. I'm going to go deeper into that distinction on the next slide, but I just want to draw your attention to it on this page. So just to orient you to the new organization. So starting on the left, we've added a new leader for oversight, Jenny Smith, who is actually on the line with us today. She is the Senior Director of Strategic Investments, and Jenny and her team are focused on improvements to the oversight process through both improved operations and also through oversight reform. We've also added several pillars under the Maryland Digital Service, representing skill sets that are both new for Maryland and are also really critical for successful technology delivery. So moving to the next column, user experience and service design. This is a new practice that we're starting to see little glimmers of in some agencies that we are supporting wholeheartedly. This team really uses an approach based in human-centered design, starting with an understanding of and designing for people. Who are the users who need to interact with technology, and starting with a real understanding of those problems and those needs before we start talking about technical solutions. This team is also focused on responding to the new Department of Justice ADA Title II requirements for accessibility and supporting the state's executive order on plain language. Moving to the next column, we have a team focused on product management, which is a very different discipline from traditional project management, which we see a lot of in the state. Product management kind of broadens that aperture of how we define success and goes beyond, is it on time and on budget, to focusing on outcomes and impact to constituents and agencies. This group is also focused on our platforms that the public engages with, and currently a big focus for that team is looking at the permitting, licensing, and certification initiative under the Government Efficiency Commission. The next pillar here is engineering. Secretary Savage has mentioned this a number of times on previous discussions that we're really focused on bringing technical expertise in-house to support agencies to more effectively work with vendor partners to ensure that we're both asking for the right things when we are buying services and that we're actually getting what we ask for. So we don't really have someone before we hired David and his team who can serve in that role to really ensure that the technology that we are buying and getting is aligned with our needs. David is also focused on building some tools to provide more transparency into data and analytics. Really right now, very focused on websites, which we'll talk about in a second, but that will help both the public and also state agencies understand our priorities, understand what's working well, and help us prioritize where we really need to support agencies on underperforming sites. So the far right pillar is web experience. Websites are the front door to the state that our residents and businesses use to engage with us. We have hundreds of websites, over 400,000 artifacts, so pages, documents, PDFs. Many of them are very internally focused. It's very much the agency telling people what they want people to know. And the shift that we are starting to make is to really think about who is coming to these sites and what are they looking for? And are we answering their questions in an effective, easy way? What we find is that when people can't get their questions answered in a self-service digital channel, they use higher cost channels. They call contact centers, they come in person, they escalate to all of you, they escalate to the governor, they escalate to the secretary of the agency. And if we can be as far upstream as possible by designing effective services, we improve trust in government and we reduce the cost to serve our constituents. So there are lots of websites that we are working on to improve both security, but also the overall experience of how people engage with government. So now I want to get more into that distinction between oversight and intervention. So Sarah, if you could go to the next page. So the middle column is oversight and the far right column is interventions. And I want to just define these two because I think oversight and intervention have at times been referred to interchangeably. So I really want to clarify the difference. Oversight fundamentally is an auditing function. This group is focusing on monitoring and alerting whether a project team will deliver value, if they are using state funds responsibly. Oversight happens on the entire MITDP portfolio and is performed by people with a very audit mindset. So they are not coming in to fix things. They are not owning a project. They're not driving the project. They are really looking at what the team, the state agency team, is doing. Interventions is a new offering that the Secretary created to help provide additional support to agencies. Some of those are MITDPs. Some of those are not MITDPs. So this is new, and we are piloting different support models. But interventions are likely to include things like discovery sprints, which we have done several of to better understand a problem, training and coaching, technical assessments, and UX and software engineering leadership or support. Interventions are performed by the people on the previous slide, that box around intervention, people who have experience building software and systems. So it's a very different talent profile from the people who are doing oversight. It can include software engineers, it can include service designers, it can include product managers, and the makeup of those teams will depend on the problem that we are supporting. So we've engaged in a handful of interventions, including advising on Secretary of State's system, ELF, the FEMIS modernization, EMA, to provide technical direction. We're also supporting some intervention work on the CJAMS project and Pollbook to validate their path forward and next steps. So just to summarize, oversight is an auditing function to make sure that projects are spending funds responsibly and in compliance with requirements. Interventions are a support function, helping agencies through either advising or direct engagement. Next slide. The dot slide. Okay, so I wanted to just talk about how all these pieces fit together. So we have been undertaking this process of really assessing the state's IT portfolio. We have conducted a phase 1 IT inventory to identify the mission critical systems and to identify the systems that are considered legacy, which we define as end of service or end of life. The phase 1 inventory was conducted with a more limited set of agencies right now, and that's kind of the light blue, if you can see that in the slide on the far left column. The Office of Security Management is currently conducting the phase 2 inventory, which expands the scope and is a much more comprehensive deep dive into all of the systems across the state. We will likely identify additional legacy systems throughout that process. We are working with agencies to align critical systems, these legacy systems and critical systems, with the MITDP portfolio to ensure that agencies are planning for and requesting funding to replace systems that are going to be end of life or end of support in the near future, understanding that replacing critical systems can take some time, and we want to make sure that they are well prepared. As we stated previously, the Maryland Digital Service is involved in a very small number of interventions, some for legacy systems, some for not legacy systems, and that list changes frequently. The time cycle of interventions can be weeks to maybe 2 to 3 months. So we support agencies based on need at the time and available support on the team. And that is a very quick overview. And I will turn it over to Craig.
Thanks a lot, Marcia. That's great. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
All right, good afternoon. I'm going to talk quickly about what we're doing in OSM for state cybersecurity and local cybersecurity. We can move to the next slide. So we've taken a three-ring approach here to cybersecurity across the state and our centralization strategy. So the first ring is do-it-owned and OSM-owned IT assets. This is where we can implement, engineering and remediations and, work directly within OSM and do it to improve cybersecurity without having to go out to agencies and work with them to make changes. These are all internal. So it limits the scope of stakeholders and is a little, it makes it quicker for us to respond here. The second ring is statewide. The focus is mostly the executive branch under the centralization mandate and the authority of the state CISO, but we don't exclude anybody or any organization statewide. So we provide our services to anyone outside the executive branch that would like them. We provide support across the state. So while our authority to enforce centralization is within the executive branch, we're supporting the entire state. And the last outermost ring is local cybersecurity. Again, we've built a program and a team within OSM to help local entities improve their cyber posture. That includes, things like providing direct support to do assessments and remediation work, as well as helping them get additional resources, whether it's through organizations like CIS or CISA, or even using some of the platforms and solutions we have within the state. We can move to the next slide. Sorry, we can move. Sorry if my voice is off. I'm still getting over being sick. So the inner ring, the areas we're focusing on here are things like our enterprise platforms, Google and Microsoft, identity and access management. So how we actually enforce management of user accounts, single sign-on, MFA. We're also working to bring in more expertise to Secure Network Maryland. That is something that's used across the state by local and state entities. So, we're building an organization internally and building out the expertise to make sure that that network, which essentially provides internet service to all governments within Maryland, is robust as possible. That we have the appropriate protections to protect all those entities that rely on that, as well as being resilient against cyber attack, so that cyber attacks, denial of service attacks don't take Maryland down, and that we can continue to operate in the worst of times. Another piece here is the MDSOC expansion. So we run the Security Operations Center within OSM that provides monitoring and detection and incident response across the state. We're working with agencies now and branches outside the executive branch to bring them into that, as well as exploring how we do the same for local entities. And the goal here is to have a holistic view of any cyber activity that's going on within Network Maryland and on Maryland.gov systems, because one of the things that we want to make sure is that any events that happen, that we see them and we can take action quickly. one agency or one local entity being attacked. Maybe it's a denial of service attack. By us monitoring and seeing that quickly, we can put mitigations in place to keep that from spreading and impacting other agencies or organizations across the state. So, that SOC expansion is really critical to have that holistic view and be able to respond quickly. Sarah, we can move. Cyber remediation. So we have been for quite a while now looking at all the results from the biannual assessments that are performed across the state. We've identified what mitigations, what vulnerabilities, or what security gaps can be implemented within DO-IT and OSM so that we don't have to go out to the agencies and work directly with them. So the first focus, again, is on that first ring that I showed you. Mitigate as many of those statewide systemic issues in our organization, because we are the predominant IT provider for most of the state, to reduce that cyber risk as much as possible. And then from there, we will, once we have the ISO program fully staffed, we will expand that out to that next ring of other agencies and work directly with them on their findings to mitigate their specific findings that are unique to individual agencies. We're building out both a GRC, so a governance risk and compliance team to develop cybersecurity strategy and policy for the entire state, and then the compliance function to make sure we're monitoring and assessing that to ensure everybody is operating within compliance to that program. We're also building out a service delivery and cyber platform team. So those centralized services that we provide, which I'll talk about on the next slide, we run those internally, so we need to have a strong team to be able to provide support and deploy those. Bug bounty and vulnerability disclosure programs are two of the new things that we implemented. This is something that the Department of Defense has run with their Hack the Pentagon program. I believe the only other state that really has a comparable program at this point is California. But this is a statewide program to identify vulnerabilities on web-facing platforms by using a crowdsourced program of expert security researchers that are vetted. So I don't want it to sound like we're just using anyone. They're highly vetted, trusted researchers. We're able to kick off these assessments much quicker, identify security deficiencies quicker, and remediate them quicker than if we relied on maybe an annual penetration testing program. Now, while we still do that, this is to augment that and really help us identify and fix things faster. And then lastly here is web security. So again, we're looking at Network Maryland as a whole and our websites that we provide and house on that, and implementing more centralized services to ensure that the security is as robust as possible. That's to make sure that our services that are critical to our residents are operational through all types of events, to make sure that state and resident data is protected to the highest capability possible. So things like our SSL certs on our servers, our domain name system to ensure that they can access those. CDN and WAF is content delivery network and web application firewall. So what that is it puts that data out onto a front end system to better protect the back end systems where confidential and PII might reside. It adds an extra layer of security and resilience to those systems. So these are our major architecture changes that we're working with, like Marcy's team and the CTO, to ensure that we can provide these services securely and robustly. The middle ring here is the cybersecurity solutions that we provide statewide. The SOC, as I talked about, we just rolled out a centralized password management platform that's brand new. So that'll improve our password security for everybody. We just rolled out an email security platform that will reduce the amount of malicious email, viruses, phishing attacks that the actual end users see. CrowdStrike is our managed detection and response. That's essentially our anti-malware, antivirus platform. Managed firewalls. So we manage some of the firewalls for many agencies. We're also doing the maturity assessments that we do every other year. And then we have the penetration testing service that any agency can make use of, whether it's driven by compliance with federal regulations or just, ad hoc because they want to see how their systems are doing. Those are provided by third-party services, threat intelligence, and the ISAC, that's our intelligence sharing, and then our attack surface management. So that's like the bug bounty that I just talked about, and our vulnerability management, looking out at our systems. And the last ring is local cybersecurity. So this is where we're providing our support out to our local entities, municipalities, counties, and school systems to help them assess their systems, remediate their systems, and provide any support that we can in whether it's getting services from federal agencies or commercial entities, or making use of our own contracts in the state to better support them and secure their environments. So that's the focus of cybersecurity. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Do any members have questions for any of the fabulous speakers we had from Do It? Steve, Senator Hershey, did you raise your hand? You're on mute.
There you go. Thank you. Can you hear me, Senator?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, well, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate the update from Do It. But I've got a bit of a concern. Secretary, as you know, there was a very scathing report issued from the Department of Legislative Services that analyzed the performance of the department. And the Department of Audits determined that Do It's accountability and compliance level was rated unsatisfactory. And one of the major findings was that Do It should assume greater responsibility and oversight for the major MIDDPs that were recently talked about. In the report, there was some specific information, and I'm saying this because, one, I think we need to make sure that we have a confidence level in the management of Do It, but at the same time, every legislator knows here that we are facing a $2.7 billion budget deficit coming up. And one of the comments said that Do It did not review the methodology of key estimates, such as cost and schedule, which are very basic, and did not obtain explanation for significant changes. For example, Do It was unable to explain why the estimated cost to complete 2 projects increased by over $1 billion. And while this, again, I think this report has very clear findings that Do It has some challenges ahead of it. And I appreciate Marcy's slides about the oversight and intervention, but I think it's very important that this committee hears from you, Secretary, on what types of changes you are making to upgrade the performance of Do It, and frankly, to ensure the taxpayers that they are not, that you are not wasting any of their money in these projects that have been sent to your responsibility.
Sure, I'm happy to respond, and I appreciate the question. You'll note that the audit covered 3 years prior to my tenure. So obviously, as you noted, there's a lot of work ahead of us. And going, back to the top of the presentation, when I started, there were 2 assistant secretaries in charge of the entire department. And you can see now that we have a CTO for infrastructure, a CTO for platform services. Marcy's entire team is new. Greg's team was a team of 3 and mostly contractors, and now it's 14 full-time PINs. The Office of the Chief Data Officer has also moved under us. So we have a much more robust leadership team. And I think it's pretty fast progress to bring that team in less than 2 years. So one, I think we have much stronger leadership than when I started. The majority of your question seems to be focused on the MITDP reform, and of course there were other findings in the in the audit, but the majority of them were focused on MITDPs. And I agree with you. I think there's as Marcy spoke to, there's a combination of factors that I think made the projects unsuccessful. One was sort of definitional. There was a understanding prior to me at Do It that we were meant to be fiscal auditors. So the profile of a lot of the team was really looking at financials. Is it on track or on budget? And, without those people being technologists, to your point, it was difficult for either the agencies with very little technical experience or our auditors, who again were mostly trained as sort of fiscal oversight managers, to be able to evaluate where a project was in its life cycle. And so that's something that Jenny and Marcy and Joe Veracali have been working really hard to change. The goal is to make, frankly, smaller awards up front and more properly stage gate these processes. So in software technology development, there's pretty common methodology for stage gating a process. You're in development, you're in design, you're in implementation, you're in transition. And that wasn't done prior to Marcy and I arriving at the state. So what we saw instead, to your point, was $30 million awarded up front to a project with frankly no ability on either side to evaluate how well that award was being implemented. So what we're trying to do, Marcy spoke to, is to make these sort of smaller awards stage gated and not let projects go so far along without the oversight. She also, I think, spoke to the ability to bring in more sort of technical oversight so people can evaluate these projects. And then further, the goal of the Maryland Digital Service, which we launched in January of this year, for those projects that predated us, that are already in flight and sort of gobbling state dollars, we have a team now that can, as Marcy and Jenny spoke to, provide some intervention, help steer those projects back on track. But I hear your concern, and I do take it very seriously, because I do think that, especially with the state's sort of fiscal situation, we need to make sure that we're leveraging all those dollars and using them as most efficiently as possible.
Secretary, I appreciate your response, in-depth response on that. And it is good to see that some of this is being addressed. And again, through Marcy's presentation and what you've just described there. Again, we certainly want you to be successful. As you know, there are a lot of things that are going to come up in this legislative session, but it appears from what you've just stated there that you're certainly trying to take the correct steps in correcting this. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Senator, as well, too.
You're welcome. Thank you, Senator. Any other members with questions? As you might expect, I have a laundry list of questions. If it's okay with everybody, I'll send them to you all by email. I think I've got a few for Nishant. Sounds like you're doing great work. Would love to talk further with Marcy about how we ensure folks are using the interventions that you provide. And Greg, it really sounds like things are going well also. And I'd like to follow up a little bit more on K through 12, because I remain concerned, at the very local level, what we can do to support the school system. So I'll send you all an email. And if anybody else has questions that they want me to include in that, if you want to send them to staff, we'll compile them all and send them along. But otherwise, I think it's probably time for lunch. Thank you all so much for joining today. I appreciate all the members of the committee. I appreciate our staff and our fantastic panelists. I hope you were able to listen to some of the earlier stuff too. It will all be recorded. But thank you again for your participation. It's great to hear from you all. We're adjourned.